Hey now, happy Wednesday afternoon and welcome to 580 Sports Talk. Has your heart stopped pounding after last night's Sunflower Showdown? I thought mine was going to just straight up stop at one point at the end of the game, but why are you throwing this Doobie Ejiofor on the perimeter? Anyway, we are here to recap every single element of K-State's thrilling, dramatic win over KU, why it is a big deal for K-State. I've got my opinions on why you would have liked to have won, but it's not a huge deal for KU. And that's not because it's not a real rivalry. No, that's not the reason why. It's all basketball issues. Don't get on me about that. But it was a crazy game. It was a thrilling game. Dan was there. We're going to talk all about it coming up here in just a moment and throughout the show today. We would love for you to jump in. By the way, Brendan Dworzinski, Dan Lucero here with you. Obviously, Sunflower Showdown, the biggest deal today. Tim Fitzgerald is going to join us coming up in the 4 o'clock hour, bottom of the 4 o'clock hour, in fact, to talk about the game as well during the Azure Credit Union Wildcat wrap-up. And we would love to hear from you as well, your thoughts on last night's game. Whether you're a KU fan, a K-State fan, let us know what you thought about how that game unfolded. The heroics at the end of the game, really all game long, by Jalen Wilson of KU that come up just short. Keontae Johnson was awesome. K-State won a game in which Marquise Noel did effectively nothing on offense. It was a thrilling game. It was a really tremendous basketball game, high-level Big 12 college basketball. So we will talk all about it over the course of the next 3 hours. Hit us up on the Big O Tires text line with your thoughts, 785-272-9429, or you can comment on YouTube as well. Sports on 580 WIBW is our YouTube channel. The comment section is open to you all throughout the day. We've also got our Wendy's High School Athletes of the Week coming up today. That's at the bottom of this hour. A couple of seniors, including a senior wrestler who just continues to dominate, has won all of his matches recently, and a senior bowler for Seaman who bowled a 750 in 3 games the other day. I went bowling with my wife the other day on, I guess it was on Monday, and I bowled a 383 in 3 games. I thought I was a freaking king. It's like, I'm Pete Weber. I am a monster. Who do you think you are? I am.
I have conquered bowling.
Katie Price's Seaman rolled a 750 last week, so we're going to talk all about that.
It might take me 6 games to get to 750. Maybe even 7, let's be honest.
We need to do a live remote from a bowling alley.
We do.
I've been saying this, especially because all the haters and losers, of which there are many, refuse to believe that I was actually decent at bowling.
The 580 Sports Talk Decathlon.
Yes. We do an NFL combine. We do some bowling. I don't know what Fulton's good at athletically. Like, we can have him pick something too. In golf, I don't want to, but if I'm picking a lot of things, I will let y'all golf. I'll just take last place. Anyway, so we will get to all of that over the course of the show today. We'll take a look at Chiefs versus Jags, our initial thoughts on that matchup. A lot of people are hot on the Jags. More people are hot on the Chiefs, and I think that is understandable why. So we'll talk about that. We've got our 580 Sports Talk headlines. What is wrong with you? We've got one gotta go. All of it is coming up on this edition of 580 Sports Talk. And again, you are welcome to chime in and be a part of the show on the Big O Tires text line, 785-272-9429, or in the comment section on YouTube. Sports on 580 WIBW is the channel. And we've got a comment right away, and I think this isn't the point I want to start with, but it's the topic we're going to start with. So from David in the YouTube comments, says, KU will be just fine going forward. I agree with that. I do. And we will explain why in just a moment. But the night belonged to K-State. It belonged, and I don't just mean K-State basketball. That night belonged to Kansas State University last night because the crowd was incredible. The environment was awesome. Jerome Tang said after the game, you get 10 points, home court advantage. Well, last night they got 20, which I thought to myself, that makes me feel even better. If it was an extra 10-point advantage, I feel even better about KU losing. But, I mean, it was an incredible college basketball scene. I know some fans were mad they didn't play Sandstorm, but outside of that, everything you could have possibly wanted from that environment was there at Bramlage Coliseum. And we just had 2 phenomenal college basketball teams in the year 2023 go head-to-head. Was there some iffy or worse officiating? Yeah, sure there was.
Isn't that baked into the college basketball experience at this point?
That is what it is.
Yeah, I almost don't even bring it up talking about the NFL anymore because it's just kind of baked into the experience of watching the NFL as the officiating is kind of dodgy.
Yeah.
Dodgy.
Sports, honestly.
Yeah, really. College basketball officiating is there too. It's dodgy. There were a lot of whistles. It did grind the game to a bit of a halt.
Yeah.
At times, certainly. But, I mean, that's...
And even so, we still had a great game.
We did, because all of those free throws were so tense.
Mm-hmm.
There was so much tension and pressure in that building last night, and both teams shot free throws just about as well as they usually shoot free throws. I think K-State was at 78%. KU was, I think, 70, 71.
Right around there.
And those were all so fraught with tension and pressure that, I mean, you stand at the free throw line with 11,000 people screaming like that. Feel your knees.
Yeah, not easy.
Yeah, and Jalen Wilson is making these cold-blooded free throws on the road, down the stretch, into a screaming student section. Like, it just further shows how mentally tough both of these teams are.
Mm-hmm.
That was my number one takeaway, is the mental toughness of both of these teams is just off the charts.
And we got, just like last year's game at Bramlage Coliseum, which was also decided by 1 point. Now, we got to that 1 point deficit in a much different way than last night. Last night was back and forth. It was very evenly matched throughout the night. K-State got hot early. KU soared back late first, early second half, and then it was blow for blow the rest of the game. You had a superstar performance on each side. Jalen Wilson was incredible. Keontae Johnson was fantastic for K-State as well. But in the end, that's one of the biggest wins for K-State. That's the biggest win of the year. And it's not, I mean, in terms of quality of opponent, ranking in the AP poll, ranking in Ken Pom, Bart Torvik, all these other advanced metrics. Best in that regard. But also, that's the reigning national champions. That's a team that has been, it's been the boogeyman for a long time. Hell, there was all that discussion just yesterday about how there's too much focus on that team and all of that. And K-State came out and played phenomenally. And like I said a few minutes ago, they won a game, a Big 12 game in which Marquise Noel did effectively nothing for them on offense. Now, we actually had a couple of good defensive plays, big defensive plays in the game. But that win for K-State, it is their night. They deserve to celebrate. Two thoughts. One, this is unimportant to the gist of the game. I'm glad they kind of partitioned off the players and coaches for the court storm. It also felt real weird watching it on TV, like it was sort of an organized court storm in that regard, which was a little weird looking on screen. But I'm glad that K-State fans got to celebrate it. And the other point I was going to bring up is, I mean, this is what Jerome Tang promised. Like, this is going to be your program. K-State fans got to take a part of it. K-State players got to take a part of it. You saw the pride those guys took in that performance, in that win. Keontae Johnson was fired up all game. Desi Sills was out of his mind last night. Didn't even mention him up to this point. That night belonged to the Wildcats, and it was a tremendous performance.
So my biggest concern going in, I think a lot of people's biggest concern about Kansas State was, would they find another source of offense to get them over the line if KU did what KU generally does really well, and that is take away your best option. And last night, KU completely neutralized Marquise Noel. Took him completely out of the game as an offensive threat. Doubled him off of ball screens, forced him away from the basket, didn't let him have any free space behind the three-point arc. They had a great plan for Marquise Noel. And K-State needs somebody else to show up, and you mentioned Desi Sills. What a luxury he has been as their sixth man, a veteran guy who's played a lot of college basketball and isn't scared of the moment, certainly wasn't scared of the moment last night. I think it was Noel last night in the post-game press conference who said, He's not a sixth man. He's a starter. He just happens to come off the bench for us. But he's a starting caliber player in the league. And he was terrific. And he gave that jolt to the offense. Naquan Tomlin, too. It was an uneven game, I thought, for Tomlin. Mm-hmm. They started, KU hunted him and Bebe Eziola defensively on the screen and roll. Like, neither of them was quick enough for KJ Adams on the screen and roll. And Tomlin had a lot of trouble with Jalen Wilson one-on-one. Couldn't get him to off his right hand. Ended up fouling out late in the game. But Tomlin also had 15 points and 10 boards. And K-State doesn't win without that offensive production from Naquan Tomlin, who's been a little bit uneven offensively in Big 12 play. So that was big. They got those contributions that they needed from secondary, tertiary scorers. The other thing, and again, this is what stands out about both teams to me, KU in a losing effort, the mental toughness of Kansas State. How many times have we seen KU fall behind early and just methodically come back? Hell, last year
in that same building?
At Bramlage, down 16 at the half.
Yep.
and just methodically clawed their way back into the game and won it there at the end. They were down 14 in the first half, got it as close as 3 by the end of the first half. It was a 5-point halftime lead, and then ended up taking the lead, I think, with 8 minutes to play. And how many times have we seen KU wear teams down to a nub and overwhelm them with their consistency of toughness and their consistency of effort? They just feel inevitable when they start doing that. I thought at halftime, even down 5 on the road, I thought KU was going to win the game. I thought they had a plan for Noel to neutralize him, which they did. I thought that they would continue to have success offensively. I mean, they scored 82 points. I thought the 3-pointers would start to fall for KU. Well, wrong on that one, hand up. But I thought KU was going to win that game the way that first half unfolded, because it seemed like they took that big punch, that haymaker from K-State early, and withstood it and stayed in the game, and water would find its level in the second half. But K-State was the team that showed their mental toughness, and they made the biggest plays of that game on defense. You mentioned Noel making big defensive plays, his strip and score with a minute left in regulation to tie the game at 72. They got the stop. Naquan Tomlin with the steal at the end of regulation, set up Keontae Johnson for what could have been a game-winning layup or an opportunity at free throws. The stop they got down 1 in overtime on the play where Bill Self called a timeout. And I know there was a lot of, frustration from one side and elation on another about the timing of that timeout. But Bill Self was trying to get the officials' attention a couple of seconds before Jalen Wilson even caught that ball, because KU was running out of time on the shot clock and about to run a 1-5 screen and roll with Joseph Yesufu and Zach Clements. And I am reasonably certain that those two have never run a pick and roll together in their lives. Absolutely not.
And real quick, just to that point, because we'll go back to K-State in a moment. You're right. I saw a lot of people from the KU side who were, oh my God, Bill, how could you? Why? Well, one, on TV, you could clearly see that Self was trying to grab whichever official that was. You were clearly able to see that he was trying to get his attention. Also, look, I get that Jalen Wilson made that shot. I would also call a timeout so I didn't end up with a dude on our coldest shooting night of the year launching a 32-footer.
Right.
Like, I have no problem with that.
Yeah, that not bad coaching at all. Not a mistake by Bill Self. Just looked bad because the shot went in. But totally understand why they call the timeout. And I mean, if he gets the timeout called earlier, I mean, who's better at drawing up plays out of a timeout than Bill Self? Nobody, literally nobody. So I felt like they'd come up with something good, but K-State defended that really well, forced another long shot, contested shot by Wilson, and then that sets up the alley-oop from Noel to Johnson that wins the game on the other end. And then KU gets another stop at the very end of the game when DeJuan Harris turns the corner, loses the ball, and K-State's first on the floor to the loose ball, and they run out the clock. KU's players after the game, when asked what was the difference, mentioned 50-50 balls, like that play at the very end of the game. And I'm sure part of that was it was fresh on their mind that they didn't get to that loose ball and they didn't get a shot away. But that tells you that KU feels like they got outworked, that the players feel like they got out-hustled, that they got out-toughed a little bit. That doesn't happen to Kansas. Kansas is 5-0 or was 5-0 going into last night's game in the Big 12 because that doesn't happen to Kansas. Because at the end of games, they're the ones who execute. They're the ones who run the play exactly the way it's drawn up and then keep you from getting a shot away. They're the team that does that. Kansas State flipped the script on them at Bramlage Coliseum. And now that they've shown that they can beat a great team, even if one of their main scoring valves gets shut off with Desi Sills doing the things that he did last night, we've been done talking about tournaments with K-State. Like they're in. That's happening.
Oh, yeah.
And we've been talking seeding, like, hey, could this team get a top 4, top 3 seed? Last night's win and the mental toughness these guys show on a nightly basis, and the fact that, I mean, Johnson and Noel get the pub, but they got a big contribution, not just from Sills last night, but I thought Ish Massoud played another good game. They're going to get David Gasson back, and I think he's going to really help them on the glass, and they could have used him last night. He's close to coming back. You start to feel like the depth is there and can contribute and take some of that load off of Noel and Johnson, even against a great team like KU. That's the kind of game that makes you ask a new question about K-State. And that question is Houston, because they feel Final Four caliber with a win like that.
I mean, if you can beat that team, who most people agree is a Final Four caliber team, then you beat them because you played that well, not because it was a true fluke. Yeah, you absolutely have that kind of caliber. You're a tournament team. You should be a top 4 team. You should be able to get a favorable placement position-wise in terms of where they end up first weekend of the tournament.
Yeah, they should be in Des Moines or Denver.
Yeah, which I think pretty easy sell to get a lot of K-State fans to either one of those places.
One last thought
go
about K-State from my perspective. We had a texter from the 402 in the Big O Tires text line ask if Bramlage was the loudest I've ever heard it. Listen, I went to a lot of midweek conference games in the late stage Bruce Weber years. Yeah, that was something different altogether. My ears, I think, finally stopped ringing this morning. And because there was so much national media last night. They had a lot of the local radio and TV up at the top of Section 25.
Yes.
So that's the auxiliary media seating. So we're at the very top of Bramlage Coliseum. And thank goodness for that, honestly. Because if you were in the middle of that last night, look, Rob Douster, friend of the program, he's a guy who's seen some college basketball, and he's been to all the meccas of college basketball. He said Bramlage Coliseum was the loudest arena he'd ever been in last night. And if I were in the middle of it, I might have been inclined to agree with him, because up at the top of it, above all the noise, it was rock concert loud in that building. A night to remember for sure for K-State and for their basketball program.
I'm trying to remember, just real quick note of the tournament before I get to KU here. I don't remember who it was. I think it was Gary Parrish, maybe at CBS, maybe Jerry Palm. Might have been Jerry Palm, actually. He had some bracketology recently that had 4 of the teams in Des Moines, including Kansas, Kansas State, Illinois, and Missouri, with K-State and Mizzou in the same bracket, and KU and Illinois as the 1 and the 8 in their respective region. That would be the most toxic first weekend site in tournament history.
Would that be worse than the year KU, K-State, and Wichita State all ended up in St. Louis? Wichita State, the 1 seed, the year they lost to Kentucky?
Man, honestly, it might be. It might be. KU and K-State hate. KU and Mizzou really hate. Mizzou and Illinois hate. There's a lot of residual beef between K-State and Mizzou. Illinois, KU doesn't care about Illinois. Illinois certainly cares about KU. Trust me, I know that for a fact. So, I thought, no, this would suck. And I thought, no, wait, this would be great. What am I talking about? This would be awesome.
Bring a hazmat suit to Des Moines.
No kidding. So that game last night belonged to K-State. I'm about to say about KU is in no way an attempt to say, K-State caught him on a bad night. No, that was a great GREAT win for K-State. There is no taking that away from them. They are that good. They are a top 4 seed in the NCAA tournament, bare minimum, the way they are playing right now. Does not take away anything from them. They'll be in the top 10 next week, unless they lose by 80 to Tech this weekend. For KU, I'm not super hard up about losing that game because, yes, the thing that stands out, if the other team is saying they outworked you, KU is feeling that way. Bill Self is saying that same thing. And I think there are a few really good examples of that, not just the 50-50 balls, but things like mental mistakes that KU usually doesn't make. The one turnover when Zach Clemens had to come in the game, DeJuan Harris pumped the ball to him 3 times, then finally threw the entry pass. Clemens turns it over about a half second after catching the ball. Catches it high, brings it low immediately. Noel pokes it away and steals it. That's not something DeJuan Harris ever does. Harris also trying to get the ball to Zuby Ejiofor with 5 seconds left on the perimeter. What are you doing? That's not going to work. I don't know what the play was. It wasn't going to work. K-State got lucky, or KU, got lucky. K-State missed the layup.
CJ Moore, friend of the program who we'll talk to tomorrow, has a great video breakdown of what they were trying to get to there and why K-State defended that so well. Naquan Tomlin essentially blew the play up.
Yeah, like a corner. He jumped the route pretty much.
Yeah.
So the mental mistakes, yeah, that's obviously concerning. But in general, you lost by 1 point on the road against a team that really hates you in overtime in a game in which you shot 6 of 29 from 3-point range. Sometimes you get beat. You don't make shots like that. It comes down to you make 2 of those threes. It's a completely different game. You go 8 of 29. It is an entirely different game. Hell, you make 1 of them. Yeah. It might be a completely different game. So I'm not super hard pressed about that. I said yesterday on the show when we were previewing the game after you had taken off for Manhattan, there were 2 things, one for each team, that needed to happen for them to have their best chance to win. For K-State, it was the flip side of the game against TCU. You can't turn the ball over that many times. You turn the ball over 20 times against that KU team, they're going to run you off the floor. I thought they were better with the basketball. I don't remember the official turnover number at the end of the game. They were, I thought, much smarter with the basketball just from the eye test. And because of that, KU didn't get nearly as many opportunities to run the floor, to make things happen in transition. The other thing I said that KU had to do was they had to shoot the ball more efficiently. And that was mostly speaking from two, because against Iowa State, they were better but not great. Against Oklahoma, we talked about it last week, how bad KU was at getting the ball into the basket from around the rim. It was the three-pointer that was the issue. Again, 6-29. You're not going to win many games shooting the ball that badly in the Big 12. Grady Dick went 1 of 8. Like, that's not going to happen more than once an entire season, maybe a second time if he has another off night.
We had a text about that for the Big O Tires text line. Shout out to our listener from the 316 who said essentially seems like the Big 12 maybe has Grady Dick's number. I actually thought last night there were some encouraging things in Grady Dick's game. Number one, he's finding his way on the defensive end.
Yes.
Teams are not going to be able to play him off the floor defensively. Who did he block at the rim? Was that Bebe?
I think. Was it Bebe?
It was either Bebe or Tomlin, but
I wanted to say it was Tomlin. Yeah, that right-hand layup.
Yeah, backside help, but he pinned it against the glass. Like that's a play Grady Dick doesn't make in November.
No.
Like, so I think he's getting a lot better on that end, which is really encouraging. And the other thing is, if Grady Dick's 1 of 8 from 3 in November, it probably finishes with 5 or 6 points. He got 16. He got to the free throw line. He drove the basketball. He was aggressive.
He's a good finisher.
He is. And teams obviously don't want him to beat them from behind the 3-point arc. He didn't get a whole lot of easy looks among those 8 3-pointers that he took. But I thought his aggressiveness, his ability to get to the free throw line where he's pretty much automatic, I thought that was all pretty good. I don't know necessarily the Big 12 has his number. I just think Big 12 is a hard league for a freshman to consistently score in unless you're like an Andrew Wiggins or a Kevin Durant. You'd be one of those guys to be a freshman and score at a really high level game in and game out in this league. Keontae George looks like one of those guys for Baylor this year. Grady Dick is a little different because he is primarily a perimeter player, but I actually thought he was all right. I agree. I think if you want to look at one guy who had to give KU more than they got from him last night, it was Kevin McCullough. 23 minutes, 0 for 2 from the field, including an air ball, no points. He's a great defender, legitimately outstanding on-ball defender. And he's so good that he doesn't have to give you a lot on offense to positively impact the game for KU, but he can't get bageled. And he's got to stay on the floor. I mean, that's the other part of it, too. To only play 23 minutes of a 45-minute basketball game, KU needed him out there.
Yeah, and that's the other thing I brought up yesterday were those matchups, and we talked about this with Michael Swain, too. You had DeJuan Harris versus Marquise Noel, and I thought DeJuan played probably his worst game in Big 12 play as well. I mean, he moved the ball well. He had 10 assists, but I just thought decision-making wise, it was not his best game, which is usually where he's at his best. And then it was McCullough versus Johnson. So you ended up, I'm going to give some credit on the other side to Jalen Wilson because I keep kind of talking around how he had this big night. Jalen Wilson had 38 points. He went 11 of 12 at the line. He was the only dude who could hit threes last night. He was incredible. It was seriously like the exact inverse of the game last year where Nigel Pack had a career game. It was just a little bit short. Ochai had a typically really good game, and he led the charge in the comeback win. Last night, I didn't think Keontae Johnson had, like, the best game of his life, but he was really, really good. And Jalen Wilson did have the best game of his life, but it came up just a little bit short. He had to get matched up on Johnson at the end of the game. That's a tough assignment to draw in the final couple minutes of regulation and overtime, but I thought Jalen did at least decently there. But all those things I mentioned, and then KU went into overtime without KJ Adams, Grady Dick, and Kevin McCullough.
Yeah, McCullough and Adams had already fouled out, and then Dick fouled out in the overtime.
Right, in overtime.
That's tough. I mean, they were running a 3-point guard lineup out there with Pettiford, Yesufu, Harris.
3 of the smallest players in the conference.
Along with Wilson and Clements.
And Zach Clements.
So there's, charitably speaking, 1.5 scoring threats on the floor. And yet, that one scoring threat, Jalen Wilson, gave them a chance to win it in the overtime. No, he was immense. He came out and, look, big game, big spotlight, loud crowd. There are going to be nerves. There are going to be jitters. That's part of college basketball. You see it all the time. And I thought both teams were a little jittery in the early stages.
Oh, yeah. Like that first segment before the first media timeout.
Yeah, right before the under 16, a lot of jitters. And Jalen Wilson in particular, he goes out, starts 0 for 3, and 2 of his misses get spiked, volleyball spiked at the rim. And I'm thinking, if he's in do too much mode and K-State's got an answer for him, this could be really problematic for KU. But if I see it from all the way on top of Section 25, I'm sure, A, Wilson felt it, and B, Bill Self noticed too. And Wilson grew into the game, and he played that game like a guy who'd been hearing people say the best player in the Big 12 is not him.
Mm-hmm.
He took it personally, and I thought he was tremendous. That's as good as a player can be in a losing effort, because he was good on the defensive end too. I just thought it was a really, really great night for him.
No, you started the game 1 of 6, and he said, "I don't care. I'm going to go try to win this game," and he did. And that's why you live with a few games in a row where he hasn't shot it well, because when he's good, man, he is as good as anybody in the league. We're going to talk more about this game coming up later on. We've got Tim Fitzgerald joining us in the 4 o'clock hour. We'll get some final takeaways in the 5 o'clock hour as well. Right now, we do have to take a timeout. We'll play some One Gotta Go next, and we've got our high school athletes of the week later on this hour on 580 Sports Talk.
Kill you? Give me $200.
Well, gotta go.
That Dr. Phil line gets me every single time.
It's really good.
Time for One Gotta Go on 580 Sports Talk with Brendan and Dan. We've got our Wendy's High School Athletes of the Week coming up here in just a matter of moments. Looking ahead to the K-State basketball schedule. Their next 4 games, they're not all on the road, but the next 4 games are against Texas Tech, Iowa State, Florida, and Kansas. Here's your One Gotta Go. Lubbock, Texas, Ames, Iowa, Gainesville, Florida, Lawrence, Kansas. You're taking 3 trips to college towns. One of these can't be on the list. One's got to go.
Okay, so I like Lawrence. That's obviously I like Lawrence fine. I think both Lawrence and Manhattan would have been wonderful places to spend 4 years, personally.
Agreed.
So it's Gainesville, Ames, and Lubbock. God, it's got to be Lubbock, doesn't it? Like,
I don't know.
It's just so desolate out there in West Texas.
Yeah.
And see, I've never been to the state of Florida.
Really?
In my life. Yeah.
Really?
I've been to like 33 of the states, but Florida just it's a donut. Most of the eastern seaboard I have not yet conquered.
Okay.
But I've heard terrible things about Florida heat and humidity. I've heard awful things, but I've experienced Texas heat and humidity.
Yeah.
No thanks. I'll take my chances anywhere else.
Yeah, that's fair.
Keep in mind, I'm from Colorado, so any humidity. Like, the humidity here is oppressive to me.
All right, that's a fair point. That's certainly a fair point. Man, Ames is just so, ugh. Like, I know we've got a lot of people in our area who are Iowa State grads. Your friend and mine, Larry Latimer, has Iowa State ties when he grew up in rural Iowa. I don't know. I guess it's close enough to Des Moines that, like, you're not that far from stuff. Lubbock is pretty desolate. I like jorts, so I'm keeping Gainesville. I'll wear cutoffs any day of the week. That's an easy one. That's my people. Yeah, I guess I'd go Lubbock, but Lubbock also has Whataburger and, like, H-E-B for my grocery store. The stuff in Lubbock is better, but yeah, it is pretty barren.
I had a good friend of mine who lived in Lubbock for 2 years, and I think he would also say Lubbock. So
okay, that's fair. That's a fair point.
All right, for my one gotta go today, we've got the lead guards on Big 12 contenders who are not Kansas and Kansas State. So that's Iowa State's Gabe Kalsher, Texas's Marcus Carr, TCU's Mike Miles, Baylor's Adam Flagler. One gotta go.
Man, that is a great one. All right, I'm keeping Miles. Miles stays. I think I'm going to keep Flagler, too, for sure. He's just been such a solid player for so long. Oh, man. I think I'm going to lean with knocking out Kalsher. I think. But that's really tough between. I mean, he's a good player, obviously. Marcus Carr's a good player, obviously.
Yeah, no bums in this bunch.
Yeah. You know what? I take it back. I'm going Marcus Carr. I'm taking Marcus Carr out.
Okay.
I don't feel super confident in it, but I like Kalsher's two-way ability. He's a big shot maker. That's a very intangible way to describe it. But yeah, I'll keep Kalsher. I'll dump Carr.
So all of these guys are 40% three-point shooters except for Miles. You know what Miles is from deep?
No, actually.
29.
29?
Yeah. That whole team, I think, is like 28% from behind the arc. They can't shoot it a lick down there in Fort Worth. But I think he's also the high scorer. He's averaging 19 points a game.
Mm-hmm.
I like his ability to create. I like Flagler's ability to do whatever Baylor needs him to do.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it kind of comes down to Kalsher and Carr for me.
Also, you're right. 28.8 as a team.
And for me, like, Carr could shoot the lights out and he could hit you for 30, but he could also go like 1 of 8 from 3-point range and shoot you right out of a game. He's got a little bit of that hero ball in him.
Oh yeah.
And like, look, when you're really good, you can get away with that a lot. When you're not really good and you do it a lot, you're Manu Lecomte. But when
whoa, wow, Manu Lecomte.
I'm sorry, he didn't deserve that. Manu Lecomte, wherever you are, I hope you're well. So it's kind of an aesthetic thing for me where Kalsher, I think, is a little better about picking his spots and hitting the big shots more so than I think Carr is. I think Carr's got a little bit of that gunner in him. And like if I were picking a guy to win a 3-point shooting contest, Miles would have to go. But just all around creation for himself, creation for others, defensive ability, I think I have to drop Marcus Carr.
I think that's entirely fair.
Even if he might be the guy most likely on this list to just set your arena on fire with a 35.9.
True. He does have a 40.9 this year, although it was against Texas A&M Commerce. Someday when we need to fill 5 minutes with a segment, we're just going to remember some 2010s Big 12 guys. I saw someone mention LeBrian Nash the other day online. I thought, oh, yeah, those are some good OK State teams.
We can't have a hero ball conversation without bringing up Javon Carter. If we're talking
author of the worst basketball possession in college sports history.
Javon Carter for 3.
We've got to take a quick time out. The Wendy's High School Athletes of the Week are next on 580 Sports Talk.
I'm Jim Chesko with you.
It's time for our Wendy's High School Athletes of the Week. Getting back to our Athletes of the Week after a few weeks off around the holiday season. And we've got a pair of seniors to get to this week. They include senior bowler Katie Price from Seaman, who bowled a 750 at the Free State Invitational 1 week ago, and Sean Wonder, a wrestler from Shawnee Heights, who has won individual titles and matches in back-to-back events for Thunderbird Wrestling. As always, our Athletes of the Week are brought to you by your Northeast Kansas and Topeka area Wendy's restaurants. We'll hear from Sean Wonder coming up in just a moment, but first, our first Athlete of the Week on the girls' side, Katie Price, a senior bowler from Seaman. Our Wendy's Female High School Athlete of the Week is off to a red-hot start to the high school bowling season. Her name is Katie Price. She is a senior for the Seaman Vikings. In her most recent meet, the Seaman Quadrangular earlier this week, how about a 607 series to take the individual title? Meanwhile, in the event previously for Seaman Bowling, the Free State Invitational, Katie rolled a school record 750 to pick up the individual title in Lawrence as well. Katie, first thing I've got for you, just in general, what has been clicking so well for you over these last two meets?
I guess I just kind of relaxed my body and decided to have some fun this season. I know that it's my last year, so I just wanted to have some fun.
So far this year, through 3 events, you've got a runner-up finish, 2 first-place finishes. Does that tie into any goals you set for yourself going into this season? You know, were number of wins or certain scores more so what you were focusing on to enter the year?
Yeah, it definitely is in my goals. One of my goals for this season was to place in the top 3, and I've done that so far, as well as score of above about a 500 at least in every meet.
We're talking to Katie Price, a senior for Seaman Bowling. She is our Wendy's Female High School Athlete of the Week after back-to-back individual titles at the Free State Invitational and Seaman Quadrangular over the last 2 weeks. When you're rolling a 750, the mental aspect of bowling, I'm sure, that comes at the forefront in a game like that or a round like that, maybe more than any other time. How do you stay focused? How do you stay in the zone when you're playing that well, when you're rolling it that well?
I just kind of when I get up on the lane, I kind of take a deep breath and I release all the stress off my shoulders and I just get right into that zone and I just roll the ball to the best of my ability and hope for the best. And I guess it just came out very well that day.
You are a former Centennial League champion as well, and obviously have been at the forefront of the Topeka bowling scene for quite a while. But you mentioned it just a moment ago. This is your senior season for the Vikings. What are some of the things you've tried to work on from the last 3 years into this season that have made you the bowler you are now? What are some of those things you really keyed in on and focused on?
I definitely worked on picking up my spares. That was a key component of the game, as well as being consistent where I'm throwing the ball.
You mentioned picking up spares, and I'm glad you did, because I really wanted to ask, as someone who was never an especially competitive bowler, but does enjoy the sport quite a bit, for you, someone who has played at such a high level for such a long time, what is the most thrilling event or thing that can happen while you're in the middle of a bowling meet? Like, is it picking up a spare? Is it picking up a split? Is it, 10th frame strike? What to you is the most exciting thing that can happen while you're out there on the lanes?
I would say picking up a split, definitely. It's sure, getting strikes is amazing, but it's better to have pick up a split. It's just a better feeling.
We're chatting with Katie Price of Seaman Bowling, a senior, and she is our Wendy's High School Athlete of the Week. Now, you mentioned the goals you had set for yourself over the course of the year. I wanted to ask about your team goals at Seaman as well. Can you give us a little bit of a scouting report about the whole roster you guys have for the Vikings this year and what some of your team goals to accomplish have been for this season?
I believe that we wanted to pick up the majority of our spares and make it to state. That's what our goals are.
All right, Katie, I'll get you out of here with these last 2 questions. We've got one looking back and one looking ahead. The first one, how did you pick up bowling as a hobby, as an interest, or even something that you are now passionate about? Where did that passion come from with your bowling history?
It actually came from my dad. I loved to watch him bowl when I was younger, and then I just came so passionate about it. And once when I got into it, I loved it. So I just kept on going.
The final thing I've got for you, looking ahead to the rest of your bowling career. Obviously, you've got plenty to go still here in this 2023 season. But even beyond that, when you leave Seaman High School, whether it's going on to college or whatever else you want to do with the rest of your life, do you still see bowling as being a part of that, something that you focus on and are going to participate in for the long term?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Definitely going to be bowling outside of school or in school. No matter what it is, I'm going to be bowling.
Well, there's going to be plenty of high-quality bowling still to come this season from Katie Price, a senior from Seaman. She is our Wendy's Female High School Athlete of the Week after back-to-back individual titles with a 6:07 on Tuesday at the Seaman Quadrangular and a school record 7:50 the week before at the Free State Invitational. Katie, we appreciate you taking some time for us today. Thank you so much for talking with us about your season, about your career, and best of luck with the rest of this 2023 season as well.
Thank you.
Our Wendy's Male High School Athlete of the Week is one of the United Kansas Conference's and one of the city of Topeka's best wrestlers this year. His name is Sean Wonder. He is a senior for Shawnee Heights Wrestling, coming off of individual titles in each of his last two events, including earlier on this week. Sean, first question I've got for you. Over these last couple of weeks, couple individual titles at your last two events. What's been clicking so well for you during this midway part of your senior season?
I think just the realization that you got to move when you wrestle as a heavier weight. A lot of the guys take it slow, so wrestling fast really gives me an advantage.
What kind of brought that on to you at this point of your career, at this point of the season? What sort of clicked or at what moment did it click that that's what you need to do?
So I've always practiced with some of the lighter guys just because that's how I've always wrestled. But then when I go on the mat and wrestle the big guys, I'd slow down and match their pace. So I think it's just thinking about it too much at practice and matches. So coming out there and wrestling fast, it worked. So I did it more and more and more, and now it's really working.
Sean, you wrestle at the 215-pound level, at least you have been over the course of this year. You mentioned, though, practicing against guys who are in lighter weight classes. How much does that help? Does it help with speed? Does it help with other things for then your matches against guys in your weight class?
Yeah, so I'm wrestling at 215, but I'm usually weighing in at about 195. So I got to be fast to make up that weight difference, and wrestling with the lighter guys definitely helps me with my speed and my reaction time and my scramble ability.
We're talking to Sean Wonder, a senior wrestler for Shawnee Heights. He is our Wendy's Male High School Athlete of the Week. In addition to that specific technical part of your game, Sean, over the course of your long and illustrious high school wrestling career, what are some of the other things you've picked up that have made you either physically or mentally tougher to get you to this point where you're having so much success in your final season at Shawnee Heights?
I think my coach has been a great impact. We do mindset training, so I feel like that's definitely helped, and being mentally tough, trying my hardest during practice so I can get that mentally tough barrier under me. Practicing with some of the best guys in the room so they can kind of whoop up on me, so I'm ready to take a loss if I need to.
Can you go through what some of that mindset training is like? I don't think that's a phrase that a lot of people who especially aren't maybe in tune with the wrestling world, not that they've heard a lot. What does that mean, and what is that process like?
So a lot of it is focusing on how you feel about the match, not necessarily the outcome. So did you wrestle good? Did you feel good? Did you try new things? Did you open up when you're wrestling, or did you wrestle closed off and scared? So we really focus on wrestling open and trying new stuff and trying your moves. And he says, if you lose a match and you tried your best, it's better than winning a match and not doing anything. So that's the main thing that we get from that mindset training.
Now, you're not just a wrestler at Shawnee Heights in terms of athletics, also a standout linebacker for the Thunderbirds football team and head coach Jason Swift. How does wrestling help you prepare for football, and vice versa? How does football help you prepare for wrestling?
Wrestling has helped with football a lot, just with tackling. I wasn't very great till this year, and then working on my double leg really helped me tackling on the football field. And then football, we got them summer weights, and just the grind that is really helps with wrestling season and getting used to putting my body through some pain.
Now, I've got to ask, I think this is a built-in question whenever you talk to multi-sport athletes, but do you have a preference? Do you prefer football over wrestling or wrestling over football, and why is that?
Well, I prefer wrestling for the most part, just because it's an individual sport. I like to rely on myself, and if I make a mistake, I know it was me that cost us that. I don't necessarily want to look at other people when I'm doing my athletics.
We're talking to Sean Wonder, a senior wrestler for Shawnee Heights. He is our Wendy's Male High School Athlete of the Week. Sean, going into this senior wrestling season for you, what are some of the individual and team goals you set out for yourself?
So individual goal, obviously win state. I feel like that should be a goal for any high-level wrestler. But the main goal that I've set is to wrestle open, try new things, and don't wrestle scared, and mainly open up. That was my goal for this year. Wrestle fast, wrestle hard, and win.
What to you is the difference between wrestling scared and wrestling in a more open style like you've been describing?
So wrestling scared would be, there's 2 minutes left. I'm up by 2. I'm not going to try anything. I'm going to stall, and hopefully he doesn't take a shot. And then wrestling open would be, I need 2 more takedowns. I need to win by 8. I need to major him. So just not taking aggression and attacking, I think, is the main difference there.
Last thing I've got for you then, Sean, is looking ahead beyond this senior year for Shawnee Heights Wrestling. What are your plans, if you know them at this point, for what you're going to do following your high school athletics career? Are you planning to go wrestle or play football at a higher level? Do you know what, if anything, you want to go study at the next level?
Yeah, so I'm looking at a couple colleges right now to go wrestle at, hopefully getting an engineering degree somewhere.
How did you get interested in doing engineering for your future?
So I'm in tech school right now studying maintenance. So mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, it all goes kind of hand in hand. So I'm hoping to further my education in that.
Sean Wonder is a standout senior wrestler for the Shawnee Heights Thunderbirds who has won his matches in each of the last 2 events for T-Birds Wrestling, and he is our Wendy's Male High School Athlete of the Week. Sean, thank you so much for taking some time for us. It is much appreciated. Best of luck to you and the rest of your Thunderbirds teammates throughout the rest of this season for you.
Thank you.
That is Sean Wonder, and that is Katie Price, our Wendy's High School Athletes of the Week. With that, we are going to send it to the 4 o'clock hour of 580 Sports Talk. We've got some Chiefs talk and Tim Fitzgerald next hour here on 580 Sports Talk. Now, 4 o'clock hour of 580 Sports Talk coming your way. I'm Brendan Dworzinski. He is Dan Lucero. We are with you until 6 o'clock coming up on this edition of 580 Sports Talk. We appreciate you spending some of your afternoon hours with us. You can be a part of the show as well if you want to hit us up on the Big O Tires text line. 785-272-9429 is the text line number. Comment section is also open on YouTube. Sports on 580 WIBW is our YouTube channel. We would love for you to subscribe if you have not already. All you have to do, go to the channel. There's a big red rectangular button that says subscribe. All you have to do is click on it. No charge, free of charge. And then you're going to get all of our shows, videos, game recaps like the one Dan did last night from Bramlage Coliseum. It really did have you up high. I assume you did the video from where you were sitting during the game?
Essentially. So there was one other person that was in the media seating doing some writing. So I just slid over to the top of section 24 and did it from there. We did not have a table in the auxiliary media seating.
Interesting.
There was no like table to set your laptop on. So yeah, I had my laptop on my lap most of the night, which, hey, that's what they're built for. You know,
that's true.
That's why they're called laptops.
They're meant to go on your lap.
They're not called tabletops. I guess desktops are what the other computers are called. I guess that's not as good a joke as I thought. No, I just slid over a section. But yeah, we were all the way at the top of that building. It was very sweaty up there as well. Very warm. They got the air kicked on in the second half, and that was nice. But I mean, that building was packed to the gills. I mean, it was absolutely full to the brim at the Octagon last night.
And if for whatever reason you didn't believe Dan, you can go watch the instant reaction post-game show on our YouTube where there's a big 24 painted on the purple wall right behind him.
Correct.
So all of the live streams of Sports Talk and Mic'd Up.
Not pictured the guy mopping going right through my legs as I'm on the air.
See, this is why I have started doing KU raps at Allen Fieldhouse from a stairwell. Like, is the audio quality the best? Not really. But if I do it in the media seating upstairs at Allen Fieldhouse, there are people with leaf blowers blowing trash after the game. They don't care that I'm there, but they also don't care that I'm there. Like, they'll just walk past. I'm like, okay, well, no one heard what Kevin McCullough did tonight, I guess.
They want to go home, too.
I get it. I totally feel for them. I'll stay out of their way, go to the stairwell. They can have the crowd. But all the post-game reactions, all the video stuff we do is on our YouTube, Sports on 580 WIBW. Would love for you to subscribe if you have not already.
Looks like our guy Mark might be a subscriber because he said he watched me last night. It was very good, and I did not pay him to say that. So thank you, Mark, for the compliment.
Hell yeah, Mark. Thank you. Coming up this hour, we will get to some NFL talk. The Chiefs and Jaguars coming up Saturday afternoon. So we'll get our initial look ahead to this matchup between the Chiefs and the Jags, meeting number 2 between those two teams. We've also got today's What Is Wrong With You, 2 stories that will try to take down what I decided to dub the worst road trip ever. The gentleman who was so mad at his fellow criminals in his truck, he called 911 to try to get them out. And then the police showed up and found duffel bags full of 83 pounds of weed and $120,000 in counterfeit cash. Not the smartest 911 call ever. Also, our good friend Tim Fitzgerald of GoPowerCat.com is going to join us coming up bottom of the hour for the Azura Credit Union Wildcat wrap-up. And again, your texts on the Big O Tires text line and comments on YouTube are welcome throughout the show. Let's get to the NFL weekend. Divisional round starts in just a few days. Chiefs, Jaguars. The Chiefs do play on Saturdays a lot in the playoffs. For some reason, they get the Saturday game all the time. On one hand, that sucks. On the other hand, you could argue, at least in the last few years, well, yeah, that's probably that's probably the window that people are least likely to watch the NFL games in. But if we put Patrick Mahomes in those windows, people will watch. That's my assumption anyway. That's like when people got all miffed that the Chiefs got the standalone game in week 18. Like, what? Why? Why are they playing on, a window when no other games are going on? That game doesn't even mean anything. It's not that important for that. Guys, they put Patrick Mahomes in a standalone window. Like, that's very simple to figure out. The NFL wants competition in all their broadcast windows. They care more about eyeballs and money. Let's be completely honest about that. So the Chiefs are the early game on Saturday. They take on the Jacksonville Jaguars. Two questions in the same vein. One, how different are the Chiefs since the first time these two teams played back on November 13th? And how different are the Jaguars from that team we saw the Chiefs play back on November 13th? I'll start this from the Jags perspective because I think it's easy to just look at the box score, look at the numbers, look at the final scores and see, oh, yeah, this team changed a lot. Now, whether it was Doug Peterson just got everything to click with his guys, whether it was Trevor Lawrence suddenly had the light bulb turn on and went, oh, wait, I'm that dude again, or what specifically it was. But going into that game and including the game against the Chiefs back in mid-November, almost exactly 2 months ago at this point, the Jaguars went 3-7. They averaged 21.6 points a game, and they gave up 20.5. So they were plus 1.1 point per game. And that was really aided by the fact that they shut out the Colts 31-0. They give up even a couple more points than that. That points allowed number looks a whole lot different. Since then, including the wild card round of the playoffs and that upset crazy comeback win over the Chargers, the Jags are 7-1. They're scoring 27.4 points a game. They're averaging nearly 6 points more per game, nearly a touchdown more a game since the last time they played the Chiefs. They are giving up 21.9 per contest, about 22 a game. But again, I'm going to essentially count that as equal because you add even 3 more points onto that Colts number in the first half of the year. They're going to be right about in the middle. So those two halves of the season, near halves of the season, illustrate something happened after that Chiefs game where the Jags turned it on. They became much more effective and efficient offensively, and they've been extremely competitive. They won their division, for God's sake. They've won a playoff game for the first time since 2017. They are much better. I think they are better than they were in mid-November, while the Chiefs are just a little bit different than they were in mid-November. They were already the best team in the NFL at that time. But I think they have found other ways to find success both offensively and defensively. Offensively, here's an example for you. The best receiver in terms of scoring in the NFL is actually the Chiefs' number 2 running back. It's Jerick McKinnon. Nobody scores at the clip that Jerick McKinnon is scoring at. In fact, it is quite literally NFL history for running backs catching touchdowns. The Chiefs have found other ways. Now, that's partially because they had to adapt to the attrition that happens over the course of an NFL season. McCole Hardman hasn't played in weeks. You have Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who hasn't played in weeks. Although Clyde, is now back into the practice window again, so they might get him back at some point. So the Chiefs have had to adapt both offensively and defensively. But I think we got to a point by week 18 where we didn't have a ton of games where you felt super confident that this team can, quote unquote, put the hammer down. Shout out to Mitch. But that week 18 game against the Raiders was really a reminder that, oh yeah, this team can generally do whatever they want, whenever they want. And that's the encouraging thing going into this game. My initial read on it is the Jags are a lot better. And I think Doug Peterson's going to have a ton of stuff to throw at Andy Reid and this Chiefs coaching staff and these Chiefs players coming up on Saturday. I still think the Chiefs are about an 8-point or more better team than the Jags are.
So they beat them by 10 in the regular season, right? But you go back and you look at that game and
really felt like more.
Yeah, it's about as lopsided a 10-point win as you can have. Chiefs turned it over 3 times in that game. They were -3 in the turnover margin. Isaiah Pacheco fumbled inside the 10. And Jody Fortson fumbled a kickoff, like a short pooch kick. He tried to return it and fumbled the ball. And then Mahomes threw a pick in the fourth quarter when the Chiefs were hunting for more points. The Jaguars also got an extra possession. If you recall, they recovered an onside kick to start that game. They onside kicked to open the game and recovered an onside kick. So that's 4 bonus possessions that the Jaguars got in that game. And they still only managed 17 points. Now, Riley Patterson missed a couple field goals. That's part of it. But Trevor Lawrence was under siege that entire game. Chiefs sacked him 5 times. They didn't turn him over, but they sacked him 5 times. And if there's one element where it feels like the Chiefs are getting better as the season goes on, it's generating pass rush. As Mike Dana has grown into his role, as George Karlaftis has gotten more comfortable, Chris Jones continues to be Chris Jones. They are, I think, maybe even a better pass rushing team than they were midway through the season. And they were good enough in that first meeting to make life really, really hard.
I agree with that.
On Trevor Lawrence. So that's one element of the matchup where if the Chiefs are better anywhere than they were in those middle, the middle portion of the season, it would probably be there. Now, you can't discount confidence. And this Jaguar team has a ton of it.
Oh, yeah.
Because you look at what they've done down the stretch since the loss to the Chiefs. They had their bye week right after that. They had that ridiculous comeback win over the Ravens. Just preposterous comeback win. Had no business rallying back, winning that game. They go for 2 at the end of regulation. They get it. They win that game. Then after they get firebombed to hell by the Lions at Ford Field, give up 40 points in that game. They're sitting at 4-8. They go beat the Titans on the road while the Titans are in a tailspin. They have that dramatic rally to beat the Cowboys in overtime. They get the walk-off pick 6 in OT. Then they beat the Jets and the Texans on the road, who are barely NFL teams. And then against the Titans, they almost let Josh Dobbs beat them at home with the division on the line, but they come up with the big clutch defensive play to advance. And then, of course, we are all very aware of what happened in their playoff game going down 27-0 against the Chargers. But that cuts 2 ways. Number one, this Jaguars team will not feel like they are out of it if the Chiefs throw a big haymaker early. If the Chiefs jump out like they did in the first meeting to a 20-0 lead, the Jaguars will look around and say, hey, we've been here before. We've been here a lot. And it's turned out really well for us. We're not going to quit fighting. We're going to keep digging in. We're going to keep making plays because we've been here and we're confident and we still have a tremendous amount of belief. That's from the head coach, Doug Peterson, on down, that belief that just permeates that whole team. So if the Chiefs think they can sit on them for 25, 30 minutes of football and then call it good, they got another thing coming. But the other way that you can look at that is, yes, the Jaguars are the team that beat the Chargers 31-30, that beat the Titans 20-16, that beat the Cowboys 40-34. They're also the team that fell behind the Cowboys 27-10 midway through the third quarter.
Yep.
And they're the team that fell behind the Chargers 27-0 with 5 minutes left or whatever it was in the first half. So you've got to make sure they stay beaten. I think that will be the focus for the Chiefs. This is a team that will take 60 minutes of beating to emerge victorious against, just given their mindset, given the way that they've played and what they've shown that they're capable of down the stretch.
They're not front runners. They're comfortable being in that sort of role. They are just the quintessential scrappy underdog, quote unquote, kind of team. And they love that. I mean, they're running with that whole, it was always the Jaguars quote. And they are on a high right now where you would imagine, Trevor Lawrence and Doug Peterson don't feel like, hey, it's house money. But to a degree, it is. This team was not supposed to be this good this year. I thought they'd be better. And I thought Doug Peterson was a perfect hire for this team. Liked some of what they did I thought they were going to be a 6-win team with a couple one-score losses, not a division winner and a wild card round winner. But they still realistically are going to come into this game, I believe anyway, and I think most people believe this, playing and calling plays like they have nothing to lose. Like, second half, if they're down at any point, which I assume they will be, if it's anything less than 4th and 5, I just imagine they're going to go for it every time. Like, why wouldn't you at this point?
Yeah.
Against that Chiefs team, you can't punt to them.
Yeah.
You punt to them, you're screwed. You're done.
Yeah. What's weird about that first meeting is they were a little bit conservative in that first game. And I brought up the onside kick, right? Remember that onside kick to open the game? They recovered the onside kick. If 4th and 9 at the Kansas City 39, 4th and 5 or 4th and 9 at the Kansas City 39. I don't remember what it was, but it was 4th down inside the 40. They punted. They get the free possession to start the game.
You're right about that.
Punted the ball in plus territory. That was kind of wild to me. And I remember that really stuck out as it goes. The other thing about that too is Doug Peterson is going to take some chances, and Doug Peterson is going to have some things cooked up for this game special. No question about it. You know who else is intimately familiar with that reality? His old boss.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Andy Reid is going to have his guys ready for whatever schematically or whatever mentality the Jaguars throw at him. He will have his guys on his toes. And also add that to one of what has been historically one of the great advantages, if not quite a guarantee, about as close as you get to it in a sport like football, in a league like the NFL, it's Andy Reid off a bye.
You also get the element of Steve Spagnuolo knows Doug Peterson pretty darn well too.
Yeah.
So those ties are obviously going to make a difference. By the way, I went back and checked because I wanted to bring up the Jaguars defense and how they've been playing. The first time these two teams met, we talked all week leading into the game about how the Chiefs are going to tear up their secondary, that they don't have a lot of talent in the secondary. Jacksonville doesn't. And they can have as much talent as they want up front. Josh Allen's a nice player. They obviously have the number 1 overall pick in Trayvon Walker. They've got the young linebackers who are pretty talented. That secondary is just not all that great. And the numbers, in retrospect, back that up. Third best passer rating of the season for Patrick Mahomes at 129.6 for the game. He completed nearly 75% of his passes for 331 yards, 4 touchdowns, and an interception. He torched that secondary of Jacksonville.
And the one number you're missing here that I think was the biggest factor in that was the 0 in the sack column. Patrick Mahomes wasn't hardly touched. The Jaguars could not get any kind of a pass rush. And I think that'll be in the back of their minds. And I think that, again, befitting the underdog on the road at this stage, they're probably going to take some chances, probably bring 5 or 6 on some snaps, on some early downs. And if that's your plan against Patrick Mahomes, all the best.
Yeah, you're not going to fare well.
That's the Arrested Development meme, right? The Tobias Funke and his wife talking to each other. You know, a lot of people thought it would work for them, and it didn't work for them at all. But maybe it'll work for us.
Exactly. Mahomes also ran for 39 yards in that game. I mean, it was just pure Mahomesian brilliance. I did look this up, though, courtesy of Ben Baldwin from The Athletic. Since week 12, so they played in week 10, week 11, the Jags had their bye. Week 12 is when they really started this resurgence, Jacksonville did. Since that point, they are 11th best in the NFL. So not great, but pretty good, about the top third of the league. They are 11th in the NFL in expected points added per play. That's pretty good. Your top teams in that category, or number 1 is San Francisco. Buffalo's top 5. The Saints are top 5. Teams you would expect to be there. We should note, by the way, the Chiefs, 10th. They've been pretty good defensively ever since then. But Jacksonville, which came into the year and came into that week 10 game thinking, okay, yeah, the defense, bad, gross. They're still at least a year away on the defensive side. They've been pretty good since the midway point of the season. And against the pass in particular, they are right now, and I got to pull this up, they're 20th, which is not great, but it is better than where they had been on the season. I'm sorry. Let me pull this up. 16th. I'm sorry, not 20th. 16th in EPA defensively against the pass. Mediocre, middle of the pack. They were in the low 20s when these two teams played earlier in the season. I would be shocked if Mahomes is that brilliant against this team again. But still, for the reasons you brought up, Andy Reid knows Doug Peterson better than anybody else in the coaching world, maybe better than anybody else, period, in the NFL world. His team is going to be ready. Andy Reid never loses coming off a bye. And it's Patrick Mahomes. You can't come back from down 27-0 against this Chiefs team. The clown show that is the Chargers, sure. It was surprising, but also not even remotely surprising. This Chiefs team, it would be the all-time most shocking comeback in NFL history.
On the road?
On the road, yeah. You know Arrowhead's going to be turned for this game this weekend.
Yeah, especially since Trevor Lawrence just gave 65,000 Maniacs a little bit of bulletin board material with his press availability earlier today, where he says, essentially, I'm paraphrasing here. He says, I have my doubts that Arrowhead will be louder than it was in Jacksonville on Saturday.
Which, even if it's just like good for our guys, it definitely comes off like we know Chiefs fans. Chiefs fans, Chiefs fans.
Yes.
It's the Michael Jordan thing come to life. It's the Last Dance thing. And I took that personally.
Yeah, somewhere in a prison cell in Oklahoma, Chiefaholic is rubbing his hands together thinking, they're going to bring the noise in Arrowhead. Sure wish I could be there, but I can't.
Oh, I bet he does. We're going to take a break here on 580 Sports Talk. On the other side of this timeout, we've got What Is Wrong With You, and Tim Fitzgerald is going to join us later on this hour to talk all about K-State's win last night in the Sunflower Showdown. We'll get to all that and more coming up here in this 4 o'clock hour of 580 Sports Talk. What the hell is right? It's time for What is Wrong with You on this Wednesday edition of 580 Sports Talk with Brendan and Dan. Our winner from yesterday, we dubbed it the worst road trip ever. A group of gentlemen who were pushing 83 pounds of weed and also pushing a bunch of counterfeit money, 120K to be exact with it. And the driver was so mad for whatever reason at the guys in his car that he called 911 because he wanted the guys kicked out. Well, they stop at a Marathon gas station, try to dump all the weed, or at least hide it behind a dumpster. The cops show up. They interrogate two of the gentlemen who are like, oh, yeah, you can check our bags. And they found weed in it, a lot of it. Then they reach out to the driver, the original caller, and he's like, oh, yeah, I'll meet up with you at the gas station. So he drives back in the truck that's got all the counterfeit money and paraphernalia in it. And they say, can we look at your truck? And they did. And they found all of the money and drug paraphernalia. I don't know why the guy felt the need to call 911. I don't know why all these guys who were pushing drugs and counterfeit money were saying, oh, yeah, go ahead. You can look at our stuff. That's fine.
Please look at our things.
I found another story today. I didn't end up picking it. It was almost the exact same thing. This guy, we won't get to it because I thought it was too similar to yesterday's story. This guy shoplifted at a grocery store. Again, similar to the meat man from last week. So he steals from a grocery store. They call the cops on him. He's like, all right, look, I scanned a few things, but can I at least keep the stuff that I paid for? They're like, okay, yeah, fine. Here, we'll help you bring it to your car. He's like, okay, sure. So the cops bring his groceries out to his car, open the trunk, and guess what's in it? A ton of weed. 37 pounds of it. Why would you agree to that? Just give up the $50, dude. It's fine. Your cost of doing business.
Right? Some things you got to charge to the game, man.
Just unbelievably stupid. I thought it was too similar, so I didn't go with that one today. Your story does involve food, though, so we'll go to you first.
Yeah, it does. This is a story that's going viral, but so few details are known that we don't really have, like, a local TV or newspaper reporting this. But this is a story from the Atlanta airport. Ever been to the Atlanta airport?
Yes, I have.
Had a religious experience eating Bojangles breakfast at the Atlanta airport one morning. Connecting flight out of going to Charlotte from Denver.
Oh, yeah.
Man, that was heavenly. Anyhow,
I love Bojangles.
Speaking of eating at the airport, there was a woman who was at the Buffalo Wild Wings and apparently tried to dine and dash. And when she was confronted about this fact, she flipped her wig and grabbed a fire extinguisher and just started spraying the fire extinguisher all over the place. There is video of this woman just very calmly emerging from gate D7, Delta Airlines gate D7 at the airport, and just spraying this fire extinguisher all over the place. Like she's waving around the nozzle like she's putting down the smoke for like Miami football to come out of the tunnel at the Orange Bowl. Just spraying it in everybody's faces. This is her way of trying to get people to leave her alone and let her, I guess, get away with dining and dashing from the Buffalo Wild Wings. With one of the clips, you can actually hear the woman say, I told you somebody paid for my order, which apparently people weren't buying that. And yeah, we don't have a ton of details on this.
There's one part where this guy in all black is walking up to say, hey, can you give me I'm assuming he's saying, can you give me the fire extinguisher? Can you just put it down? Can you stop? And she just turns around real quick, blasts him in the face. And he goes, whoa, throws his hands up. What are you doing?
That's got to be very unpleasant.
Extremely.
Getting sprayed with a fire extinguisher. But she went on a bit of a rampage at whatever terminal that is at Hartsfield, just with the fire extinguisher. Just totally lost. Yeah.
Oh my God.
The video is really good. I would urge anyone who would like a bit of supplement to this particular content to maybe I'll just, you know what I can do? I can post a link in the chat. You know, we can do that, right?
Yeah.
We got the chat on YouTube.
Yeah.
So for those of you who are watching the show on YouTube, I am going to drop the link to the story. And you then can watch it yourselves.
Another reason you should go subscribe to the YouTube and listen to us on the radio. You can do both. We've had people tell us many times that they do both. You are welcome to do that. My story today involves the worst dad of the year. We're going to the Nashville area in Tennessee, where a man from Bellevue, Tennessee, was drunk driving when he decided to let his 5-year-old son take the wheel and then crashed their car into their neighbor's yard. Police said that a witness told officers he watched the car hit a mailbox in the 8,000 block of Charlotte Pike on Saturday. The driver then grabbed his son out of the car and ran from the scene. Police found the crashed car on the side of the road with multiple open bottles of alcohol inside. This guy clearly has a problem, according to court documents. Police looked up the license plate information, tracked it to a house about a half a mile down the road. When officers arrived at the home of 53-year-old John Edwin Harris, the man was driving his wife's car down their driveway. Harris told officers that he allowed his 5-year-old son to drive the car and that the child jerked the steering wheel to cause the crash. They crashed into a neighbor's mailbox. She said her late husband had installed that mailbox he made from metal and concrete when they first moved into the house 45 years ago. So you had to add the tearjerker part of this.
Sentimental mailbox.
Yeah. She said the father and son were lucky to survive the crash after seeing the damage. Apparently, this is a pretty big mailbox. She says, quote, it's very upsetting, especially when I find out a 5-year-old child was driving the car. Where does the responsibility fall? On the man? If he was intoxicated, what in the world was he doing with a 5-year-old child in the car? She wants Harris to pay for a new mailbox to be bought and installed at the end of her driveway. She could not understand why a parent would put their child at risk behind the wheel of a car.
Yeah, obviously. Like, this guy absolutely sucks.
Huge loser.
Endangering his child. 5-year-olds shouldn't be driving. He probably thought in his head, this will be great because I can't get a DUI because I'm not driving. Like, the real simple thought process to follow there, right? Sometimes we have trouble following the thought processes of our winners, like yesterday's, for example.
Yes.
But today, this is a very simple thought process. I am completely loaded, and if I drive, I'll get a DUI. But if I have a sober driver, I won't.
How did he explain this to the police? Because the writing there says he told them that he put the kid in the driver's seat and then he jerked the steering wheel, and that's why they crashed.
You know, never mind the police. How did he explain this to the child's mother?
In the middle of a screaming match, I would imagine.
By the
then he was getting back in the car. Another detail. I'm going to grab my wife's car now. I got places to go.
He might prefer jail. Depending on the constitution of the child's mother. He might rather go to jail.
Yes, I think that is absolutely true. I just want to know, is he like, dang kid jerked the wheel. That's the only reason we crashed. If he had just driven straight, we would have been fine.
We've got one strenuous vote for, strenuous is not the word I'm looking for here, but one vehement vote for the drunk dad from the 785 on the Big O Tires text line.
I mean, this is a classic battle of that story is a true what is wrong with you, but the main character sucks so much that I almost lean toward going with the Atlanta story.
She sprayed up an entire airport gate with a fire extinguisher because she tried to get free B-dubs at the airport.
Listen, I love wings. Okay,
Me
I
too.
said wings the other night. What would that have been? Sunday night. We went to shout out to Johnny's.
Maybe
my wife
I'll
and I
have
went.
wings tonight. I love wings.
Oh, you should go. But I was like, man, I gotta have wings. Let's go to Johnny's and eat. I know wings are getting expensive everywhere. They are pricey,
Facts.
unnecessarily pricey in most places. But they ain't that pricey. Like,
No,
what
pay
you
for
eat
your
a large?
food.
You eat a large bone in with 8 beers. Like, there's no way it was that expensive that you had to dine and dash.
Yeah, we got to get
at the airport. Where are you gonna go?
the other reason that my vote today goes for the fire extinguisher lady is there's a chance we get some details on this that could elevate it to a Pantheon level story. Like, just the basics of it make it a good story, but we could eventually find out this is a great story.
Does that beat yesterday's?
I think it does.
All right, you know what? I'm curious to see where this goes as well, so I'll join you. I'll say we advance this one on. A little bit tentative, but that's fine. We'll advance on the airport fire extinguisher story. That's our winner today in What Is Wrong With You. We've got to take a break. Tim Fitzgerald joins us next on 580 Sports Talk.
Big Kansas State victory.
Oh, what a great day it is to be a Wildcat today. K-State beats KU last night, 83-82 in overtime. And to talk all about that massive win for the Cats, we welcome in our good friend Tim Fitzgerald of GoPowerCat.com. That's where you can go for all the best coverage of all things Kansas State athletics. You can also follow Fitz on Twitter at Life of Fitz. Fitz, have your ears stopped ringing from the raucous crowd last night at the Octagon of Doom?
Yeah, it's hard to judge how loud it was because they've moved our media seats this year. So, when you're down on the floor and all the noise was aimed at you, it was pretty interesting to hear what it was like. But now we're kind of up in the stands next to the tunnel, and it was loud, but it's hard to put it up against other games because it's just a different way to enjoy that amount of noise.
Were you sitting with Dan on the rings of Saturn last night, or were you a little bit lower?
Nah, Fitz gets a better seat than me.
Yeah. I'm kind of more in the Jupiter class, but I'm sure Saturn was lovely this time of year.
What stood out to you the most about that game, Fitz? Was it an individual performance? Because, man, there were some good ones when you look at Keontae Johnson and Desi Sills in particular. Was it the toughness, especially at the end of the game? What really, to you, is the lasting image of why K-State was able to come out with the victory?
Well, what lasts the most in my memory is the fact that K-State didn't play anywhere near its A game and still beat Kansas. And I don't know if that's been, true for a long, long time, that K-State could play anything but a really high performance, focused on all the details. All your key guys like Marquise Noel have to have big nights. Someone's got to go off. That's kind of been the formula for beating Kansas. And you probably want to catch them on a little bit of a down night too. I don't know that Kansas played particularly well, but I know K-State didn't play nearly as well as it's capable of, and still leaves with the victory just because Jerome Tang has done such an incredible job of remaking this roster in such a short period of time.
The thing that stands out to me more than anything, and I've mentioned this a couple times on the show already today, Marquise Noel gave you almost nothing all game offensively. Did come up big defensively a couple of times. That might have been his best defensive game of the season, but he didn't give you much of anything in the way of scoring, and yet K-State still found a way to put up 83 points in overtime. I mean, that is really hard to do when you get nothing from a guy who's averaging 25 a night in Big 12 play. What'd you think of the way that he impacted the game without scoring and the way the rest of the offense picked him up?
Well, it shows his growth. You go back one game to TCU, they did a good job of keeping him out of the game, taking him away, and the rest of his game suffered. He turned the ball over. He just didn't, look and think at all. None of that was true last night. They did a good job of shutting him down. It wasn't a good offensive night for him. He missed some 3-pointers, but he still defended. He still, was a great assist man, a setup guy for his teammates. He did all the other stuff you need to do in the course of winning a basketball game. And I think that was a good sign from him. Again, when they lost at Butler, they learned a lot and got better. That might be true after their loss at TCU, that they'll learn from it and get better.
Our guest is Tim Fitzgerald of GoPowerCat.com. It is the Zurich Credit Union Wildcat Wrap-Up. We do it every Wednesday at this time here on 580 Sports Talk. Fitz is on Twitter at Life of Fitz, and all of his and his staff's essential work is at GoPowerCat.com. Fitz, the mental toughness of this team continues to amaze me and be the thing that stands out the most about their 16-2 start. You better be pretty mentally tough to hang in there after Kansas rallies back from that early 14-point deficit and takes the lead with about 8 minutes to go. And you've got to be mentally tough to hang in there in overtime when you're down one with a minute to play. Where does that come from? Is that player-driven, coach-driven? Where does the mental toughness of this team stem from?
Well, you do have veteran players, even if they haven't played together. You've got guys that have played a lot of basketball, with Keontae Johnson and Marcus Noel and Desi Sills, and you can go down the list. They've been on the court a lot. I think what really amazes me is that Jerome Tang's been able to, and his staff have been able to sew them together into a cohesive unit that understands what they need to do in the course of a very close game and how they can win it. I mean, they're 4-0 in overtime this year. if you're not well defined and have a great understanding of what you need to do, you're not 4-0. You might be 0-4, and that changes the season wildly. So their ability to win close games has really been the fuel to the fire here that keeps them going forward.
You mentioned Desi Sills there, and he was a major factor last night. 24 points for Sills off the K-State bench. I thought both he and Ish Massoud gave good minutes off the K-State bench last night. Massoud in particular, after it felt like he was deep in the doghouse coming out of the Nebraska game where he got a DNP CD, has given some really, I think, essential bench minutes at times for Kansas State. Johnson and Noel are the headliners, and deservedly so. They're both playing like first-team all-conference guys. But are we starting to see some of that depth? And maybe even more so once David Gasson comes back, are we starting to see that the roles, the depth forming around the two stars is going to be capable of sustaining a run over the course of this Big 12 season in the way that it needs to?
Well, they got to stay healthy. There's no doubt about it. Even being down one player with David Gasson cuts it to the bare minimum because Tyke Green's just not able to play in certain games at the level he needs to compete to be on the floor, even though he's a great physical presence. But the emergence of Ish Massoud is huge for the team because he's now becoming the player that we thought he would be when he came from Wake Forest, which means, he's not a banger in any way. He's not known for his inside play. He's really a perimeter shooter, and he is shooting the ball exceptionally well, and he's played big roles now in a number of games because of his ability to shoot the ball. And also, all of a sudden, they've got him playing pretty good defense. He was part of the guys that got it done on the very last possession and got the ball back to run out the clock. So it's fun to watch how this staff is improving players. They're not just going out and getting players; they're making them better. Even Desi Sills hasn't had these kind of numbers consistently through his career, and he's showing a lot more consistency. And you just go through this lineup and you find player after player that's playing some of their best basketball of their career, and that's not by chance. That's by coaching.
Tim Fitzgerald joining us for the Azura Credit Union Wildcat wrap-up here on 580 Sports Talk. Tim Fitzgerald, of course, the publisher of GoPowerCat.com, part of the 24/7 Sports Network. Fitz, what are your impressions of Jerome Tang as an in-game X's and O's strategy coach? Because he went up against a guy that I think is the best in the business at that stuff in Bill Self last night and emerged 1-0 lifetime against Self. Obviously, Tang's been an assistant for a long time. This is his first time with the Keys as a Division I coach. What have your impressions been about his strengths and maybe his weaknesses as an in-game coach?
Yeah, I mean, it's been impressive. I mean, what his staff's been able to do. Did they make adjustments soon enough at TCU? Probably not, but that was just one of those games where you kind of felt like, okay, this isn't our day. We're just going to take this one on the chin. But we saw them do it again last night in the fact that they consistently come out of timeout a better basketball team than when they go into timeout. And that, for me, is the number one sign of a great coach. And I saw it a number of times from Kansas. Timeout, they come out, they get a bucket. Timeout, they run an inbounds play, they get a bucket. That, Bill Self gets his team 4 to, I want to say even 10 points sometimes directly out of timeout, and the ability to score with something coming off the bench in terms of a play call. And Jerome Tang is showing some of that too, with coming out of the timeout, crucial end of game situation, and throwing the alley-oop lob that wins the game. If your team comes out better from a timeout than it went into that timeout, you're a pretty good coach, and that both of those guys have proven that now.
Jerome Tang grabbed the mic after the game, climbed atop the scorer's table, and said, "This isn't about who we beat. This is about us," and led a rousing chant of KSU, which stood in stark contrast to what the student section at Bramlage Coliseum was chanting throughout the night. Short of
what was that they were chanting? Do you want to repeat it?
I cannot repeat it because I would like to have I'd like to have a job when I come back tomorrow.
I think it was Dan Lucero.
Now,
Dan Lucero. And we can't have that kind of obscenity in Kansas City.
that's actually happened one time. It's a very long story. Shout out to the Wichita B-52s of the Professional Indoor Soccer League. Anyhow, that Arena Soccer League. Neither here nor there. Anyhow, short of Jerome Tang asking nicely or the sound guys in the band at Bramlage Coliseum not playing anything with a 4-4 time structure, is there any way to get rid of that chant?
He is the one man on earth who could do it. And I literally mean that. He has enough sway with the student body maybe to stop it. I don't know if they'll ever get it stopped permanently from the KU game, but he's gotten it cleaned up from everything else. He intervened at the start of football to get the students to stop, and it stopped with the exception of playing Kansas. And it had not really shown itself this basketball season until you played Kansas. So at least that's progress, but he's determined to get it focused on Kansas State, and hopefully we'll see the same rowdy environment from the students, but with the KSU instead of the other thing that ends in KU. So we'll see, but I sincerely mean this. He is the only one that could stop it. Chris Kleiman can't, Gene Taylor can't, University President can't, I can't. Yeah, maybe Jake LeBon could, but I don't know.
He's got all kinds of great suggestions of what to chant instead that sound like that.
Ichabod. Yeah, that doesn't work as well. It will be interesting to see how the students respond to his quite amazing, hopping up on the table to address the crowd after a win. He's a force of nature. There's no doubt about it.
We're talking to the publisher of GoPowerCat.com, Tim Fitzgerald, here on 580 Sports Talk. It's our Azura Credit Union Wildcat wrap-up. Head over to GoPowerCat for all the best coverage of K-State athletics, and look for Fitz on Twitter as well, at Life of Fitz. And just to follow up with that point to Fitz, and you obviously know which side I lean toward with this rivalry, but I was excited for the game. I thought it was going to be good basketball. I thought it was going to be a great environment at Bramlage Coliseum. There was so much, for years, at least as long as I've been a part of it, there's been so much, culture war nonsense between the two fan bases. We hate you, but not, for any real reason. We just like to say it, or, one side's classy, one side's not. It's all the stuff that never really changes, and I don't think personally really accomplishes much from either fan base. Do you like the way that Jerome Tang has handled a lot of this? Not just the fact that he's trying to get rid of the chant for as many games as possible and trying to get K-State fans to take ownership of the program, but do you like the way he has tried to handle giving that ownership back to the fan base?
I sincerely appreciate it. I really do. And, as someone who'd rather not hear the chant, I appreciate his efforts, and I hope he can accomplish it. But also, I'm going to be very blunt here. Baylor had no heated rival. They just didn't. I mean, they had probably rivalry type games with, Texas and TCU and Tech. They have no heated rival. Nothing like KU, K-State. Nothing like Oklahoma State, or OU, Texas. And so this kind of disdain for those with whom you share the same space in sports is not unique to KU, K-State. It's not unique to college sports. It's everywhere. I mean, you can see it in soccer leagues in England. You can see it in so many other things our culture embraces. And I think having a really strong rival that your fans despise is a new experience for him, and I think he'll adjust to it as much as the fans will adjust to Jerome Tang.
There's probably a joke somewhere in there about the city of Waco and the ATF having a rivalry, but I'll leave that to the history majors. Tim Fitzgerald covers the Kansas State Wildcats for GoPowerCat.com. Head over to GoPowerCat for all the best coverage of Kansas State. Fitz is on Twitter as well, at Life of Fitz. He joins us every Wednesday for the Azura Credit Union Wildcat Wrap-Up. Fitz, we appreciate you taking the time for us. Thank you so much, and hopefully we're talking about a few more K-State wins coming up next week.
That was a great way to end that segment. Bless you for that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That's Tim Fitzgerald from GoPowerCat.com, the best in the business. I have like 2 jokes about Waco. One is about Dr. Pepper, and one is about that.
Yeah,
So-
I was going to say Mr. Pibb as Baylor's big run.
Oh, ooh, that's a good one. That's a little more clean cut than my joke, I think. We've got 580 Sports Talk headlines and more Sunflower Showdown reaction next hour on 580 Sports Talk. Hey now, 1 hour to go on this Wednesday edition of 580 Sports Talk. I'm Brendan Dworzinski. He is Dan Lucero. Thank you so much for spending some of your afternoon with us here on this January 18th, 2023. Already halfway through the month of January. How about that? Days go slow, years go fast, as they say. I think I'm probably a little bit too young to get too melodramatic about how fast time goes by, but it is crazy. We're already halfway through the month of January. We're already 2/3 of the way through the show today. If you missed any of the show up until this point, lucky you. You can go back and listen on our website. That's 580wibw.com. The podcast tab is right in the middle of the website. Just hover over that. Click on 580 Sports Talk when the menu pops up. And that is where you will find the hour-by-hour breakdown of the show, including our chat with Tim Fitzgerald last hour, our breakdown of the Sunflower Showdown earlier on today. We'll get to more of that coming up here later on this hour, our final thoughts from last night's contest for both K-State and for KU. We've also got our headlines here in just a moment. Additionally, you can go back and watch the show on YouTube as well. You don't have to just watch live. And if you didn't see it live, you say, well, I guess I'll try to watch it tomorrow. No. The video is posted there full time. It is up. So
it lives forever.
If you want to go back and see, dang, I want to see what Dan's face looked like when Brendan made a joke about the ATF in Waco at the end of last hour, you can do so. Sports on 580 WIBW is our YouTube channel. You can head there. What's a funny face? I'm glad I got some laughs.
I think my eyebrows about leapt off of my head.
Sports on 580 WIBW is our YouTube channel. Go subscribe if you have not. That is the best way to see when all of our different videos, live streams, and more are going live on our YouTube channel. Shout out to those of you who have subscribed today. A couple more added to the list today. We're up to 140. That's pretty good.
Hey, we love that.
I've only been doing this for about 2.5 months at this point, so appreciate all you guys who have subscribed and watch every day and who, of course, listen every day. On the Sports Voice of Kansas, 580 WIBW. If you're not on the YouTube stream, you can also hit us up on the Big O Tires text line. 785-272-9429 is the text line number. Let us know your thoughts and anything we are talking about on the show today. We're going to lead things off this hour talking about the Chiefs injury report. That's how we start our 580 Sports Talk headlines. Brought to you by Blue Dot on this January 18th. You can go check Blue Dot out online at blue.kansas.com. Mostly clean injury report for the Chiefs today. Sky Moore and L'Jarius Sneed both listed, but both participating in full. That is good to see. We're really hoping for that after they got the week off last week. Frank Clark with a groin issue has been limited each of the last 2 days, practicing, but in a limited capacity. I'm not going to lie. Yesterday, when I saw that he was limited in practice, I thought, oh my God, he's sick again. I cannot believe he got sick. No, this time it's actually an injury. But Frank Clark limited. They're going to need him for this game for sure. McCole Hardman, DNP yet again. Injury listed as a pelvis injury, which sounds awful.
Yeah, very clearly not responding the way he had hoped, not responding the way the Chiefs would hope, and trending towards not having him available for Saturday. I think at this point, that's a pretty safe assumption to make.
Yeah, that's tough. Really hoping that he could come back. But unfortunately, sounds like he probably will not be able to go on Saturday. Your injury report for the Jacksonville Jaguars actually pretty clean for the most part and a little bit better than yesterday as well. 6 guys listed as limited so far. That includes reserve wide receiver and special teamer Kendrick Pryor with a shoulder injury. Trevor Lawrence with a toe has been limited each of the last 2 days. I imagine Trevor Lawrence is going to be just fine to play on Saturday. Wide receiver and kick returner Jamal Agnew, shoulder issue as well. He's been limited. Luke Fortner, offensive lineman with a back issue the last 2 days, has been limited both days. The good news for Jacksonville, long snapper Ross Matisick had a back issue. He DNP'd yesterday. He was limited today, so it was back in some capacity. And a big one, offensive lineman Brandon Sheriff, abdomen issue. Did not practice yesterday, limited today. And unfortunately for him, the jokes write themselves that he went to Waffle House after winning last weekend and then had abdomen problems. Just so you are aware, because usually if you're in the swing of this by this point, the injury report comes out Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, the participation report to be more exact. But because the Chiefs are playing a day earlier on Saturday, the participation reports come out a day earlier as well. So Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, game on Saturday, as opposed to Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, game on Sunday.
So I've got some other NFL notes on our Blue Dot of Kansas headlines, which we didn't get to yesterday, because we were off early for K-State basketball. So a couple of news and notes regarding coaching staffs across the NFL. We, I think, kind of alluded to it yesterday, but the Los Angeles Chargers are looking for a new offensive coordinator. They let Joe Lombardi go after their disappointing end to their season. Probably the most obvious parting of ways with a coordinator that could happen in the NFL this year.
Brandon, would you like to come back and work here again? Yes. Fire Joe Lombardi.
Yes. Under one condition. Fire Joe Lombardi. Anyway, so Joe Lombardi's out in LA, but a couple of...
real quick, while we're talking about Joe Lombardi too, sad headline. Did you see who else is out in LA?
Yeah, our guy Michael Wilhoit was let go as the linebackers coach.
Scapegoated.
Yeah.
For real, though, their linebackers played really well this year.
Yeah.
That's probably their best defensive unit.
Deeply unfair.
Maybe we can get a Monday with Mike before the Super Bowl.
That would be nice. It's always we always enjoy hearing from the former Highland Park and Washburn great Michael Wilhoit, and wish him the best. Hopefully he lands on his feet and on another team's coaching staff very soon. Anyhow, other offensive coordinators, however, are being spared the fate of Joe Lombardi. It sounds as though the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to retain offensive coordinator Matt Canada, which I'm a little surprised to see. But on the plus side, Matt Canada has a great spoonerism. Cat Manada always makes me laugh. So Matt Canada is coming back to Pittsburgh, and Ben Johnson has told the Detroit Lions that he will return as offensive coordinator. That's a big deal because Johnson was expected to have a lot of interest around the league as a possible head coaching candidate with the work he did with Jared Goff and the Lions offense this year. So that's big for the Lions to try and build on the momentum of their step in the right direction under Dan Campbell in year 2 to have Ben Johnson back running that offense. I think the Lions are going to be a very trendy playoff pick for next year in the NFC.
Oh, yeah.
And Ben Johnson back is a big deal. One other NFL note of interest, the Dallas Cowboys have added kicker Tristan Vizcaino to the practice squad as some insurance after Brett Maher missed 4 extra points in Dallas's Monday night win over Tampa Bay in the wild card round.
We had someone in the YouTube comments yesterday say they would dump Maher after going 1 for 5. Do you feel like they should bring him back for another week?
He did make the last one.
He did.
And, I mean, he'd only missed 3 all year?
He had missed 3 in the last 3 years combined.
Yeah. And then missed 4 in one night. Yeah, that was something else. I don't know. Like, do I feel super confident if I'm Mike McCarthy and I got to win a game with a field goal and I'm sending a guy out who missed 4 extra points less than a week ago? I don't know. So that's why Vizcaino's around, because if Maher struggles in practice tomorrow and Friday, the Cowboys will have Vizcaino ready. He's played in 3 games this season with the Cardinals and the Patriots. 2 made field goals, 3 made extra points in the Cardinals win over the Los Angeles Rams earlier this year.
That Ben Johnson news is fascinating for a couple of reasons. One, if they can put up offensive numbers again next season in Detroit like they did the second half of this season, he is going to get whatever job he wants as a head coach going into the 2024 season. If not, and if we get most of what we've seen from Jared Goff in his career and that offense doesn't take a step forward or at least stay as good, he might have cost himself a chance to be a head coach. I think it's a worthwhile gamble, but it's a big one nonetheless.
Well, I think it just goes to show that the job openings this season in the NFL just really aren't that desirable.
They're not.
I mean, look, you want to be a head coach. You want head coach money. You want that head coach opportunity. But if you're a first-time head coach, because you know what a lot of first-time head coaches don't get a chance to be is second-time head coaches if the first run doesn't go well. And if I'm a guy with an opportunity to be a head coach for the first time in the league, I'm looking at Denver's situation where you're handcuffed to Russell Wilson. I'm looking at the penury of the Cardinals front office, whatever the hell the Houston Texans are as a staff, record label, and a crew. The Carolina situation where you don't have a quarterback, you might get to pick one, that's a little bit appealing, I guess. But David Tepper kind of feels a little too hands-on at times as an owner. There just aren't any great slam dunk, no doubt about it. This is a place that a first-year head coach can come in and thrive kind of jobs. And I think that's reflected in guys like Ben Johnson, who he would be very high, I think, on just about anybody's list, saying, you know what, I'm going to come back and I'm going to give it another go as an offensive coordinator. Speaking of offensive coordinators and speaking of failed first-year head coaches, I had almost forgotten about this. I did want to mention it here. The New York Jets are expected to interview former Denver Bronco head coach Nathaniel Hackett for their open offensive coordinator position. I only have one word. I don't even think it's a word. I think it's just 3 letters. LOL.
I still think he ends up back in Green Bay. I think he is going to get like red zone specialist and curator of vibes is going to be his official title.
Yeah, players seem to genuinely like him as a person. He seems to be able to relate to players very well.
Mm-hmm.
But he's never even really been a good offensive coordinator unless his quarterback has been Aaron Rodgers. So maybe that's what the Jets are thinking. The Jets are thinking, well, if we hire Nathaniel Hackett, maybe we can get Aaron Rodgers. Yeah, you see how well that worked out for the Broncos.
There you go. There's your Tobias Funk meme again.
Yes.
Hasn't worked for all those people.
But it might work for us.
Unbelievable. Next up on our 580 Sports Talk headlines, brought to you by Blue Dot of Kansas. How about some hot stove news? How about some hot stove rumors?
Hey, if you're a Royals fan, you're parched this winter.
We've got 2 Royals rumors for you. One more enticing than the other, although both of them are like having a glass of lukewarm water on a hot day. We'll start with the slightly more positive one. According to Dan Hayes of The Athletic, who is generally, I think, considered to be one of the best Twins writers out there, he reported this week that Minnesota recently reached out to the Royals about outfielder Michael A. Taylor. It is unknown if those discussions are still going on. MLB trade rumors indicated that there has not been any recent smoke in that regard. All right, that's rumor number 1. I will answer my own question. Would you trade Michael A. Taylor for fill in the blank? Yes, I absolutely would.
Yeah, 1 year of him for anything that could maybe help you for the next 6, if they're a pre-arbitration player, or next 5 years if they've just started their career. Yeah, that's kind of a no-brainer for me, especially when you can plug Drew Waters into center field next year and probably not lose too much.
No, and I'd rather see what Waters has anyway. I'd rather see, can he be a long-term option than knowing that Michael A. Taylor's a lame duck on a bad team.
Still some teams out there that could use the center fielder, and maybe this is part of trying to stir up the rumor mill for the Royals from their perspective to try and float something like this and say, hey, we're open for business on Michael A. Taylor. If there's a contender out there that might need a 4th outfielder like the Twins, or some team that doesn't really have a center field solution right now, like Boston or Colorado, maybe this gets some interest percolating a little bit in a guy, again, who's only got 1 year left on his contract.
Here's the other rumor. This one sucks, and I hate it a lot. From Mark Feinsand of MLB.com, he put this on Twitter. Indicated that the Royals and Padres have some interest in former Reds, Cubs, and Yankees closer Aroldis Chapman. 3 words for you. No, thank you. Yuck, gross, ew. Keep him a million miles away from the Royals.
So
I hate that.
Aroldis Chapman in 2022, career high earned run average, 4.46. Your ERA is not the end of the world, but his fielding independent pitching of 4.57 suggests that he earned that ERA. Career high not a career high in walks per 9. Sorry. His highest since 2011, walked 6.9 batters per 9 innings. Not nice. Career low in strikeout rate, down to 10.7 strikeouts per 9. Still pretty good. Still would be better than most of the Royals relievers, certainly, but a career low, suggesting that this is a player well into the back 9 of their career. Also seems to be a genuinely bad guy with a history of domestic violence in his past.
Yeah, bad dude.
Yeah, just listen. I understand removing, just considering the player as an asset. If Aroldis Chapman has 3 or 4 good months in your uniform and you're not a contending team, you could probably trade him for something really nice because everybody's going to want a left-handed reliever at the trade deadline. And especially one with a pedigree, which Aroldis Chapman, he of the 315 career saves, certainly does have. But you don't have to do this if you're the Royals. You've got left-handed options in your bullpen. You have Amir Garrett. You have AJ Misevich. You have Dick Lovelady. He's still kicking around.
Yeah.
Like, none of those guys have a domestic violence arrest on their record or a DV suspension on their record or, some issues with some firearms on their record.
Yeah, I don't think Dick Lovelady ever was in trouble for firing off a round out of his gun to terrify his baby mama in their garage. I don't think that ever happened with him.
Yeah, this is not a thing you need to do, so maybe you can flip Aroldis Chapman for a double-A middle reliever in July. Like, you don't need to do this, and I sincerely hope that the Royals do not do this. John Heyman reported earlier today, too, that he threw a bullpen, Chapman did, for the Marlins in Miami today. Mm-hmm. That feels a little more realistic as a team that might look at Chapman and see, oh, hey, a Cuban player. This could help us sell some tickets. We could put him on some billboards. He could be very popular with our fan base, such as it is in Miami. That would seem to make a little more sense than him coming to Kansas City. I don't think this is going to happen, but it's not great to be connected with him at all, I don't think.
One other thing regarding the Royals real quickly, because we didn't get to this on
by the way, resounding applause for that idea on the Royals' behalf from the text line, the 785, giving us a for God's sake why. And we got another one from the 785 says, well, he throws fast, so that's cool. Not as fast as he used to.
Yeah, there's the thing about guys who get by on, well, I throw 102. What happens when you don't? Like, where does it go? And for Chapman, it's
getting
gone
booed off the
fast.
mound at Yankee Stadium is where it's gone. He's 35. Like I said, I get it from like a strictly asset management standpoint, but this is not the kind of thing you need to do. If you're going to spend real money on a guy, try and make your team better, it doesn't have to be this guy because there's not only is he not a great guy, a decent chance he's washed and he's not going to make your team better. Then what? Then you have a jerk who stinks.
The other Royals note I wanted to bring up that we didn't get to on yesterday's show, according to Ken Rosenthal at The Athletic, he put together a whole column about this, a whole column about Zach Greinke and the Royals. That's odd and tells you that baseball news is slow right now.
All the good free agents have signed. They're out of content.
Yeah. So he wrote that, and here's how it starts. Essentially says the Royals don't need Zach Greinke. They've already added some free agents. Maybe Greinke just eats up some innings, et cetera, but he's a future Hall of Famer. He calls him a potential Hall of Famer. I think he's in for sure.
I think yes. Yeah, Zach Greinke's going to Cooperstown.
Started a Royal, was a Royal last season, and essentially, if the two sides want to come together, if the Royals say, hey, we'd like to bring you back, and Greinke says, okay, yeah, I'm willing to come back, there would have to be some legit, fairly major compromises. I think there's two ways to look at that. One, I would not hate having Zach Greinke just for watchability purposes. I know as the year went on, he sputtered a little bit more, but he was fine. Like, I'd rather watch Zach Greinke than Chris Bubich again, and that's essentially what it comes down to. The downside is you added Jordan Lyles, you added Ryan Yarbrough, you bring back Zach Greinke. Greinke ain't going to be a long reliever, right? Like, he's starting. Those other guys are going to start at least most of the time, unless they're just truly awful. They don't want to get DFA'd. So you're going to start limiting the opportunities for those other guys who are still, quote unquote, trying to prove it. Like, Singer's going to start, obviously.
Singer's going to take the ball every 5 days. And you figure Lyles has done that the last 2 years, going to be asked to do that again. Yarbrough likely asked to do that again. Yeah, you start to, if you bring Greinke back, you start to crowd out guys. But at the same time, you're crowding out guys who haven't shown that they've earned that spot. And, maybe a little healthy competition gets those guys in a good headspace and brings out the best in the Lynch's, Bubich, Heasley, in that camp. The flip side of that is you could also just roll the 6-man rotation. That might be more comfortable for Yarbrough, who's never been a high volume innings guy. Greinke, who's in his late 30s. Maybe you go 6-man a little bit, mix and match at the back end. Give Lynch some more starts against left-handed heavy lineups. Go to Heasley, mix and match, start guys some days, relieve guys other days. That would take a little creativity, but maybe Matt Quatrero's up for it.
I think I'm in favor of it for what it's worth. I just stop. I'll take mediocre and iffy pitching over, oh my God, this is awful pitching any day of the week. Any other headlines for you today?
Yeah, speaking of bad, good things happening to bad people, it looks like TCU is going to hire Arkansas's Kendall Briles as their offensive coordinator. An official announcement expected tomorrow. Briles, the son of disgraced former Baylor head football coach Art Briles, who can't get a job at a Denny's within the footprint of Power 5 college football. He has been the offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach the past 3 seasons at Arkansas. He is being tabbed to replace Garrett Riley, of course, Lincoln's brother, who left to be the offensive coordinator at Clemson. There is no good reason to hire Kendall Briles for any position. He is as responsible for the atrocities committed at Baylor University while Art Briles was a head football coach as any other member of that staff. And again, his dad can't get hired anywhere. What makes Kendall so damn special?
I don't know. Honestly, I could not tell you. Their offense was worse year over year from 21 to 22 by several points a game.
Mm-hmm.
They went 7-6 in a year where they were hoping to maybe be a 10-win team after their bowl game. I mean, he's connected to all the atrocities really at Baylor. You don't need to do that.
No.
There are other great offensive minds out there who would love to come coach at that school in that kind of talent-rich area with that head coach.
And none of them have been involved or tied to the things that Kendall Briles has been involved with and tied to. But it appears that TCU wants to go in this direction, and so they're going to. Like, that's what it's going to be. We'll see. This has not been met well in all corners of the world.
Not surprised.
Not met well by a lot of TCU fans. But, hey, there are a lot of Auburn fans who are happy about Hugh Freeze being hired as their football coach. And Auburn said, thank you for your concern. It has been noted. Here's Hugh Freeze. So I don't see TCU having to change a heart, but it is disappointing because that was a program that had a lot of goodwill. She had a really fun season, played for a national championship, and Sonny Dykes appears to be willing to squash some of that goodwill by hiring a noted bad dude to be his offensive coordinator.
I'm not so naive as to say I can't believe these guys are getting hired. Why would you just hire your friends? I mean, that's how coaching works everywhere, and I understand that, but it's so amazing that we have seen multiple instances, and to different degrees, of teams that had great vibes hiring people that are vibe vampires, they're energy vampires.
Like Cincinnati is Scott Satterfield?
Louisville players, other coaches, media members, and fans hated Scott Satterfield. They couldn't wait for him to leave. And Cincinnati said, you know what? We want that guy. Why? Why in the world would that be your choice? Kendall Briles to TCU. You're on top of the world if you're the Horned Frogs. You got that guy? You've got to have other nepotism hires you can make, right?
A texter from the 785 of the Big O Tires text line says they think they can redeem him. And, I mean, we all know what the C in TCU stands for, although TCU would very much like to not be called that anymore, much like SMU doesn't prefer you refer to them with the M in the middle of SMU. There's a reason for that branding-wise, but certainly there may be an element of that to it that they do feel like they can do image rehab for somebody who hasn't proven willing or really aware that his image should have taken any kind of a hit at all. Like these people aren't sorry for what happened at Baylor. They view all of that collateral damage, all of those women whose lives were ruined by those football players. They view that all that as a cost of doing business, cost of having a good football team. Why should those men be redeemed?
Like they didn't find any punishment anywhere. Like they've been just fine. People were hanging Art Briles banners from the press box at Baylor a couple years after he got fired.
They'd love to have him back. They could fire Dave Aranda tomorrow and hire Art Briles, and a lot of that fan base would be thrilled.
And in fairness, and you're right, but to say a lot, like it's not everyone. I think a lot of Baylor fans would say, no, get that trash away from me. Just like a lot of TCU fans are upset.
Right. Like I said, I don't want to paint with too broad a brush, and that's not fair of me to do that for Baylor, where I was willing to extend that grace to TCU. But it's just, you don't have to do this. Like, you don't have to do this.
We're going to take a time out here on 580 Sports Talk. Shout out to Blue Dot for sponsoring our 580 Sports Talk headlines. You can visit our friends online at bluedotkansas.com. When we come back, final thoughts on last night's K-State win in the Sunflower Showdown here on 580 Sports Talk. Last night, the Kansas State Wildcats picked up the biggest win of the still pretty brief Jerome Tang era, beating KU in overtime 83-82 in round one of the Sunflower Showdown. By the way, we are now under 2 weeks from the next meeting, January 31st in Lawrence.
Another Tuesday night. Yeah.
That'll be fun. That'll be a good time. I'm very excited for that one. You were at the game. You've seen a lot of this K-State team. We've both watched a lot of them, but you've been there up close and personal for a handful of games this year. What do you, or I don't know how I would exactly want to phrase this, but like, what can this lead to? And I think you can either look at that from the very, like, this is a jumping off point to even bigger things, even greater things, or you could possibly look at it as just, hey, this is the Big 12. This is a tough win, a home win. You got to control home court if you want a chance at winning the league. This is just another win, another feather in the cap of this program. You move on to Texas Tech this weekend. Where does K-State go from here? I guess that's the question. Where can this win lead them to in the immediate and long-term future?
So going into last night, Kansas State had lost 15 of the last 16 Sunflower Showdowns. A lot of people, including myself, can remember a time when KU had won 31 straight in this rivalry. I think it was 94-05 when they won 31 in a row in the rivalry. Last night was only the sixth time ever that Kansas State has beaten Kansas at Bramlage Coliseum. And I think if you are a K-State fan, you look at those facts and you think one thing. You think that sucks because that's your rival. That's the game or the two games that mean the most in any season. And the series, historically, like you would expect, given what Kansas basketball is and has been, you would expect that Kansas would have a significant historical advantage in the all-time series, and they do. But in recent years, it's been really pronounced, and really over the last 30 years, it's been extremely pronounced. Really, you have to go back to the 80s, the last time it was competitive. Like, yeah, in a meeting in, meeting out basis. It felt like both teams went in and had kind of an equal chance of winning.
I mean, we've all seen the graphic or heard it talked about where the two programs have gone since the 1988 Elite Eight, right? Like,
right.
We've all seen the numbers. We know what KU has done since then. KU's won 3 national championships since that meeting. K-State has had some good years, but has been far from a basketball school.
That's 35 years. It's essentially my entire life.
Yeah.
And to not feel like you're on or anywhere near level footing with your biggest rival, that sucks. Like that's a bummer, because when the rivalry is competitive, when you go into every rivalry game feeling like, wow, this one could go either way, that's when a rivalry is at its best, and it brings the best out of both programs when that's the case. And I think the inverse of this is probably occurring on the gridiron, where K-State has been so dominant in the Snyder era, or since the Snyder era in the football version of this Sunflower Showdown. And Kansas fans are at the point where, look, man, this losing streak sucks. Like, we got to get on, it may take us a while to get on level footing. It take KU football a while to get on level footing with K-State football, but we got to start beating these guys. We got to start making this game one that's competitive on a year in, year out basis. That hasn't really even felt possible over a long range for Kansas State because of what Kansas basketball has been for so long. And if you're ever going to change that paradigm, it starts with seasons like this one and wins like last night's. If you're ever going to break the paradigm. Now, look, like the 6-0 advantage in championship banners is not going to change overnight. The all-time wins and the all-time series advantage, Kansas is going to be Kansas.
There are folks who are going to get mad at you for saying 6 banners, by the way.
Yeah, because the Helms Foundation one?
Yes. One fan base definitely would say 6. Another would say it's 4.
You can't, like, that's rivalry, right? You can't talk about one half of the rivalry without making the other half mad. Like, you can't do it. It's not possible. That's why it's so great. But for Kansas State basketball, the goal is not, we're going to close, we got to close that gap in championships. We got to start ripping off national championships. We got to start winning the Big 12 every year like Kansas has. No, you start with, when we play those guys, we can beat them. Anytime we step on the court with that team, we are not overmatched. Anytime we step on the court with that team, we are not afraid. We go against that team and we can beat them. We start to beat them when they come to our house on a regular basis. And we start beating them. When was the last time they beat them at Allen? Mid-90s? Was it the Woldridge era? Was Woldridge the last coach to beat them there?
It's been a long time.
I think that's right. I think Woldridge was the last K-State coach to win at Allen Fieldhouse. You can fact check me on that. Yeah. I'm rolling. But that's what that's what you want this rivalry to be from the Kansas State perspective. And it's a long road to hoe to get there, but it starts with a game like that, where you're both in the top 15 and K-State comes out victorious at home in a thrilling game that could have gone either way in so many different ways. So we heard Jerome Tang say it, and people keep referring to it because it was a great line from his opening press conference. I'm not here to rebuild. I came here to elevate. Well, elevating the Kansas State program starts with, they can stand toe-to-toe twice a year with Kansas. And they keep saying, Jerome Tang keeps saying it, the athletic department keeps saying it, the players keep saying it, there's no reason we can't be impossible to beat at home. There's no reason we can't be frequently in the top 25, frequently competing for championships in this conference. The belief in that, the belief that that is true, starts with a win like that one. And wherever it goes from here, it feels possible now for Kansas State to become the program that Jerome Tang and the players have talked about it becoming.
So the last time that K-State won in Lawrence, it actually was in the 2000s. It was 17 years ago, 2006. K-State won 59-55 in Lawrence. The prior time to that they won in Lawrence was, you were correct, January 17th, 1 year to the day of yesterday, 1994. They won 68-64 at Allen Fieldhouse. Between those two wins in Lawrence, KU won 31 meetings combined between the two buildings. KU didn't lose from February 94 until January of 06 against K-State. That's crazy.
Yeah, 31 in a row.
That really is preposterous.
One texter from the 785 does point out that the only reason the streak exists in Lawrence because of Steve Mikhailuk's 20 rushing yards in the now we've been 2018 meeting.
Here's the way I view this. Did they call it travel? Then it wasn't a travel.
Yeah, I mean,
box score doesn't say he traveled there.
Yeah, listen, 2007 National League wildcard game. Padres fans still insist Rockies outfielder Matt Holliday never touch home plate. My thought has always been Tim McClellan said he did. That's the home plate umpire, and that's good enough for me. That's all that's all I need. But no, it does. It makes it feel possible that Kansas State can elevate the program and get to a point where, okay, maybe they're not, every year in the top 5 like Kansas is, but every year in the top 3 in the Big 12, every year a threat to win the Big 12 championship. That's what they want the program to be. It feels possible that they can get it there if this is how it's beginning.
Well, and two, combining what you were saying about, playing a team like KU and being able to say, hey, we can beat them. We can beat them anytime. Their place, our place does not matter. And combining what Jerome Tang has been talking about, you don't have to like them, but cheer for us. This is about us. This is about Kansas State, not about another school. I know he's mostly talking, almost entirely, at least publicly talking about the fans and the chanting and all of that and the rent-free stuff, which even as a KU fan is wildly annoying. But I think that should apply to basketball too. Like, KU's not the only good team in the conference. Like, Baylor's really good. Jerome Tang knows Baylor's been really good. Iowa State's really good this year. TCU, who just beat K-State. Oklahoma's had really good years. Texas is obviously really good this year. It's more than just, oh, man, we know we can beat Kansas. We can beat anyone. We can beat anyone in this league. We put up 116 points on Texas. We put up 97 on Baylor in overtime and won. Like, it should be
in Waco.
It should be a mindset that, yeah, we can beat Kansas, but because of that, we can beat everybody else. We don't have to go into any game thinking we are up against it, where I don't know if anyone would admit it, but go back to last year's team. Like, you ask Joe Schmo on the bench or any team in the last 3 years, hell, even before that when K-State was winning under Bruce Weber, be like, oh, yeah, that's pretty daunting. Like, no, they have the mindset and the feeling they can go into any game and beat anybody in any place. And that's something I don't think K-State has had in several years.
They're crazy mentally tough. And there was the first thing somebody asked Keontae Johnson, what do you want America to know about your basketball team if this was their first time seeing you play tonight? And he started his answer by saying that we're one of the toughest teams out there. They really pride themselves on that toughness. And I think that really manifested itself in a win over, KU teams are always mentally tough. I know that one of Bill Self's favorite things to do is to call his team soft, because he understands how important toughness is.
Yeah.
And he understands that getting his teams to that point of being mentally tough, to never believing you're out of the game, to always believing you're going to win, is an important part of why Kansas has been so successful for as long as they have. Can I have a quick word about that chant?
Go for it.
So, the chant. Like, it was loud. There was some extra stank on it last night because a quarter of the crowd was student section. Here's my thought on the chant, because I remember being 19, 20, 21 years old and feeling like it was the most subversive thing in the world to do is to yell out a cuss word in public with my friends. Like, I get it. I get the appeal of it. I get why the students want to do it. I get why they're resistant to adults telling them what to do, because, again, I remember being 19, 20, 21 years old. Some of the things I used to say when I was in college at DePaul University about our big rival from Wabash, I want you to trust that we hated Wabash as much as K-State fans hate KU. Some of the stuff I said, I'm glad it's not out there publicly, because I would be canceled, brother, with a capital C. Canceled. I promise you. I'm glad it's not out there. So I get it. I do. I understand. But Jerome Tang doesn't like it. Jerome Tang don't want to hear it. Jerome Tang doesn't want to hear that word in his house. I am not offended by the F word. Anybody who's ever been around me or knows me well knows that sometimes it's part of my vocabulary. Sometimes I play baseball. I was in a dugout for a long time. Like, sometimes it slips out, here and there. It's part of, it's very expressive, very versatile word. I like it very much. But my mama doesn't like that word. And so when I'm in my mama's house, I don't say that word. And K-State is 16-2 right now, which means Bramlage Coliseum is Jerome Tang's house. That's daddy's house. And if Jerome Tang doesn't want to hear that word, that should be enough.
I will also add this about it. If you are in the camp that says, yeah, I love Jerome Tang, but this ain't it. I disagree with this, and it's never going to stop, yada, yada. I hope you're in for a long ride, because he's not going to stop doing this. He pretty much said as much. I mean, you heard this last night.
Mm-hmm.
He was talking. Pretty much said, I had the quote in front of me just a moment ago, where he essentially said, like, apparently I still have work to do. Like, his crusade against it is not going to stop. So,
no.
I don't know. Maybe listen to the guy who has gotten you to this point.
Yeah.
Just a thought. Real quick thought on KU, because I do think the last night's game was more about K-State than it is about KU. And here's a great example why. KU went into the game ranked 7th in the Ken Pomeroy numbers. Do you know where they are today?
Probably still there.
They are still 7th in the Ken Pom numbers. They dropped one spot nationally in adjusted offensive efficiency from 15th to 16th because they went 6 of 29 from 3.
Right.
Okay, like, it sucks to lose. It sucks to lose by 1. It sucks to lose a rivalry game. I said it earlier, and it really can be boiled down to as simply as you went on the road, lost on the road in a hostile environment by 1 point in overtime with 3 starters out of the game, fouling out in overtime, and you went 6 of 29 from 3, and you still lost by 1 point.
Yeah.
Not a big deal for
A
KU.
texter from the 785 points out, as a KU fan, the K-State win last night was a win for them and the interest of the Big 12. I certainly think that's true in this respect. KU having a game and a half lead on the field a third of the way through the Big 12 schedule. That's not
scary hours, man.
Yeah, like you know how that ends. We've been there before. Now we got some real drama up at the top.
Nah, Big 12's best league in the country. It's okay to lose by 1 on the road. That's really not a big deal. We do have to take a quick break. We're back with more 580 Sports Talk after this. Final few minutes of 580 Sports Talk on this Wednesday afternoon. Short show coming up tomorrow. We'll be off early because we've got coverage of day 1 of the Topeka Invitational Tournament live from the Charger Dome at Topeka West High School. Got a 3-man crew on the call of the games coming up tomorrow. Myself, Dan, Larry Latimer will all be factoring into the broadcast team tomorrow. We've got 3 games coming your way. Hayden versus Wichita Southeast, which I believe is the first ever meeting between those schools. We've also got Topeka West versus Lansing and Topeka High versus Lawrence. Those will be our 3 games. Coverage will begin around 5 o'clock tomorrow right here on 580 WIBW. Other postseason, quote-unquote, tournament action in the NFL this weekend. I don't know if you've looked already. Do you know what game has the biggest spread of any of the 4 divisional round games?
I believe it's Jags Chiefs, is it not?
It is 8.5. The next closest is the Eagles favored by 7.5 over the Giants. That is an interesting number. That is a really interesting number, and I think initially I'd lean to the Giants on that one. The Bills are favored by 5 at home over the Bengals. That one is also calling my name. San Francisco is favored by 3.5 over the Cowboys. That game will be in Santa Clara. Man, those Bengals and Giants spreads are real tempting. I'm not going to lie.
Well,
I might have to get some CLV on those. I'm going to dive on those real fast.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that because you can bet the NFL playoffs with FanDuel, where every play is a rush. This weekend, FanDuel is giving all customers a no-sweat same-game parlay during the divisional round. It doesn't matter if you're new to FanDuel or already have an account. You get free bets back if your NFL playoff same-game parlay doesn't hit. Same-game parlays let you combine all your favorite bets for a chance at a bigger payday. For example, for that Bengals-Bills game, you could bet Josh Allen to throw over his total passing yards, Stephon Diggs to catch an anytime touchdown. Maybe you like the Bengals to get Joe Mixon into the end zone. You can combine all of your favorite bets. You can ride with thousands of other fans and bet popular SGPs already made for you. If you're new to FanDuel, join now with my promo code Lucero to see for yourself why it's America's #1 sportsbook. And if you already have FanDuel, you can start building your no-sweat same-game parlay today. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL. You must be 21 and present in Kansas. 3 or more legs, minimum $1 bet required. Refund issues, non-withdrawable free bets expire 7 days after receipt. Max bonus $5 unless otherwise specified. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. FanDuel is offering online sports wagering in Kansas under an agreement with Kansas Star Casino, LLC. Gambling problem? Getting help's your best bet. Call 1-800-522-4700 or visit ksgamblinghelp.com.
That Bengals-Bills line moved as you were doing your FanDuel read. It is now 5.5.
I'm that influential, or you are in Las Vegas. You're that influential.
Man, I'm gonna pull out the phone here. I might make some action, put some action in play here during the commercial break. We'll wrap up this edition of 580 Sports Talk coming up after this with the final word. Let's wrap up this Wednesday edition, this post-Sunflower Showdown edition of 580 Sports Talk with a quick final word. Dan, you are up first.
Happy 8th anniversary to this.
Wilson toward the end zone.
What the hell is wrong with you? Why would you do that? What is wrong with you?
Sorry,
That
man.
is insanely mean.
I have
done nothing but be friendly and polite all day. I did not deserve that.
That, of course, was the end of the 2014 NFC Championship game. Russell Wilson to Jermaine Kearse in overtime. Seattle 28, Green Bay 22.
I'm in awe. Why?
It was the 8th anniversary.
I don't even know how to go on from that. I don't even know what to say. I was going to say something about KU and how don't sweat it. I was expecting we were going to do like someone was going to say something about K-State. Someone would say something about KU. Apparently, I'm an idiot for thinking that might happen.
You trusted me. That was your first mistake.
KU fans, don't be too hard pressed about last night's game. KU will be fine. K-State, congrats on the win. You deserve to celebrate. Man, what the hell? That's going to do it for 580 Sports Talk. Shortened edition of the show coming up tomorrow. We'll talk to CJ Moore. We might talk to Rick Peterson. Not sure exactly what we'll do, but we'll get you a preview of the TIT one way or the other. That's tomorrow starting at 3. For that traitor Dan Lucero, I am Brendan Dworzinski. We'll talk to you tomorrow on 580 Sports Talk.